All right, you are good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting for September 6, 2022. We will call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock, right on the money. And then with that, we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think I'm going to lead it today. So, when you're ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, Madam City Clerk, if we could have roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien. Councilmember Beach.
Present.
Councilmember Coulson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Here.
Mayor Ortiz.
Here. And I have a report out from closed session, but we didn't have a closed session. So I'm going to take a minute and talk about upcoming events. And what I received from our Parks and Rec director was starting Monday, September 12th, the teen scene will be open Monday through Friday from 3 to 7 p.m. for drop-in use. Opening for the weekends will begin January. Spend the night and your tent with your family at Washington Park. Join us for the family camp out on Friday and Saturday, September 23rd and 24th. Call the community center to sign up at 650-558-7300. And if you haven't already signed up for the Muddy Mile on Saturday, October 1st, call the same number. Thank you. And then from our library, we have, please join the Burlingame Library Foundation for a speaker series fundraiser this Sunday from 5:30 for Hello Lewis, celebrating the life and music of Louis Armstrong, a concert and conversation featuring author, lecturer, and director of research collections for the Louis Armstrong House Museum, Ricky Riccardi. Sounds like a relative. With trumpeter Alfonso Horn and pianist Mathis Picard. Tickets are still available at burlingamelibraryfoundation.org. Also, September is the library card sign-up month, a month we use to celebrate all library users, old and new. This year's theme is finding your voice at the library. Patrons are encouraged to call the library at 650-558, I'm sorry, we'll do that again, 650-558-7543, and leave a voice message letting us know that what you enjoy about the Burlingame Library. Leave a voicemail to be entered into a drawing for a pair of wireless Bluetooth headphones. So I think I'll call right now. With that, colleagues, anybody have any upcoming events they want to share? I see our city clerk has her hand raised, her analog hand.
I forgot to send this to you, so my bad. But this Thursday is the last day. If you have a student, someone 18 or under who wants to enter the I Voted sticker contest, they just need to send it to me. All instructions on how to do it are on the city clerk's page and on the Generation Voter page. It's a wonderful opportunity. All the I Voted stickers this November in Burlingame will be designed by our own students.
That's wonderful. And how many entries roughly do you have?
I have close to 170 at the moment.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, guys, time is running out. Send us your artwork. Colleagues, anybody else have any upcoming events? And having none, then we will move on to item number 6, and it's presentations. So our first presentation is our proclamation recognizing September as Suicide Prevention Month. And I think we have with us Ms. Sheila Nathan Barr, Chair of the San Mateo County Behavioral Health Commission. Is Ms. Barr on? So she is here to receive the proclamation. So let me just take a minute and read the proclamation. And then if she would like to have some words, we'd love to have her say something. So with that, proclamation recognizing September as Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas the city of Burlingame will join the San Mateo County, California, and the United States in honoring Suicide Prevention Month, National Suicide Prevention Week, September 4th through 10th, and World Suicide Prevention Day, September 10th, to spread the message that suicide can be prevented. And whereas in 2021, 54 people died by suicide, 34% decrease from 82 in 2020 in San Mateo County. And whereas in 2020, the San Mateo County Star Vista Crisis Hotline received 12,297 contacts, And in July 2022, the Star Vista Crisis Hotline received 10% increase compared to July 2021, likely due to the debut of the 988 number on July 16th. And whereas the Burlingame residents are urged to play a role in supporting each other and preventing suicide by knowing the signs of suicide, finding the words to communicate, and reaching out to local 24/7 resources, including our local San Mateo County Star Vista Crisis Hotline at 650-579-0350, or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988 or 1-800-273-TALK. And whereas residents can also play a role in suicide prevention by supporting local Suicide Prevention Month events, advocacy days, and communication campaigns across the city, county, and state, the 2022 September Suicide Prevention Month theme is Take Action for Suicide Prevention, Thriving at All Ages. And whereas the city of Burlingame has joined the San Mateo County Mayor's Mental Health Initiative, where mayors across 20 cities in San Mateo County have come together with the mission of promoting awareness and access to mental health resources in their communities. Now, therefore, I, Ricardo Ortiz, Mayor of the City of Burlingame, do hereby recognize September 2022 as Suicide Prevention Month. And with that, if Ms. Barr is available, we'd love to hear from her.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. To Mayor Ortiz, Vice Mayor Brownrigg, Council Members Beach, Colson, O'Brien, and city staff and residents of the City of Burlingame, thank you so much tonight for declaring September a Suicide Prevention Month. My name is Sheila Brar. I am the chair of the San Mateo County Behavioral Health Commission. Proclamations such as this for Suicide Prevention Month are important and critical steps for communities to take to begin to normalize the conversation around suicidal ideation and mental health. Without the shroud of stigma or fear, individuals can then seek access to help that they need, whether through peer support or professional means. Thank you so much for your proclamation tonight. Mayor Ortiz, you went over most of the talking points I had from this moment out, but I would like to encourage everyone to please promote Suicide Prevention Month by wearing or having teal or purple, or downloading a virtual background like the one that I have. It can be found on the San Mateo County Health website. Also, our in-person and virtual events that'll be happening throughout the county and throughout the month of September. And one other action that I think is very simple is to save the numbers that Mayor Ortiz went over for Star Vista Crisis Center and for the National Prevention Suicide Lifeline that can be accessed at 988, because you'll never know when you or a loved one will need this incredible resource. Thank you again for your proclamation tonight.
Ms. Barr, I apologize for stealing your thunder, but I really appreciate
No problem.
I appreciate you being here tonight and helping us share this very, very important message. So thank you so much. Colleagues, anybody have any comments? And I don't see any raised hands. So with that, we thank you so much. Good night. And we will move on to item number 6B, which is an update from Caltrans on El Camino Real Renewal Project. And I believe our Public Works Director, Mr. Syed Mertuza, is going to make the introductions.
Thank you, Mayor Ortiz. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As you're aware, that Caltrans has been working on the El Camino Renewal project for several years and closely coordinating the effort with the Citizens Task Force and City Council Subcommittee consisting of Vice Mayor Brownrigg, the Council Member Beach, and City staff. City Council had requested that Caltrans provide an update regarding the project and process, where we are and what to expect. As a result, Caltrans team is here tonight before you and will be making presentation. It is my pleasure to introduce Rebecca Kravick. She's a managing partner at Convey Inc. and leading the effort, the community outreach efforts on this project for Caltrans, and she'll be introducing the rest of the Caltrans team. Rebecca, Megan, can you have her on the
I think I have control too.
Great, thanks.
There we go. You guys hear me and see me? Hello. Well, good evening, and thank you all so much for this opportunity to provide this update. Many of you we've met along the way, but we want to give a special thanks to the Burlingame Historical Society, the City of Burlingame staff, and all the cities involved, San Mateo, Millbrae, and Hillsborough. This is really a project about collaboration, and we appreciate that you've all been great collaborators. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation, so just give me a moment here. And then I will take an opportunity to introduce the team. Oh, one more button. There we go. Okay. Are we seeing this in presenter mode? Yes. Okay, great. So again, thank you. We're happy to be here. You are going to see a project update about the El Camino Real roadway renewal project. And we have several Caltrans experts here tonight, each of whom are going to present on their own discipline. Ramel Pardo is our senior project manager, and he'll provide some general information. Frances Scherenbeck is a senior environmental planner at Caltrans, and she also leads cultural resources, so she'll provide an update on that. Kimberly White is our senior landscape architect, and Mark Wong is our senior transportation engineer. And you're going to receive a lot of great information. We're going to start with just some general project overview for those of you who might be less familiar with the project, but we're also going to touch on all that we've accomplished since the environmental document was released last spring. We're also going to talk about what's next for the project, and then some fun visuals for the future of the avenue. And I'd like to now turn it over to Ramel, who's going to give some basic project overview and introduce the rest of the project slides.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hello, everybody. Welcome and good evening, everyone. My name is Ramel Pardo. I'm the senior project manager assigned to this El Camino Real project. I'm gonna cover some project overview information and then hand the presentation over to my team. Next slide. We've been working hard to achieve solutions that meet your overarching goals of retaining the character of El Camino and improving the safety of this important roadway and its sidewalks. Next slide. This slide shows our 3-mile project area limits and a bulleted list of the main items we're working on to improve. I will now share a few details about each of the 5 scoping items. Next slide. ECR El Camino Real has significant settlement, cracking and heaving of asphalt. The damage is so extensive that the road base has been compromised and surface patching is no longer an option, as you can see in this slide. There are several ADA issues present on the sidewalks: lack of appropriate widths, cracking of concrete that creates uneven surfaces, and cross-sloping issues. All of these will be addressed with this project. Next slide. A new modern drainage system is also needed for ECR. There are several issues shown here that are a result of old drainage infrastructure. Next slide. A total of 16 intersections in the project area need pedestrian crossing improvements. We'll place highly visible pavement markings and install proper yield signs at these intersections. Next slide. Many intersections of ECR do not meet current sight distance standards. The images on this slide illustrates basic lines of sight we're trying to achieve with this roadway renewal project. Next slide. Our team has been busy keeping this project on schedule, and we've accomplished a lot. We're going to summarize our activities for you and also talk about what's ahead. Next slide, please. This slide shows the various dates of accomplishments achieved and what's next. I won't read through all the list, but as you can see from this list, we've been keeping busy the last couple of years. We are now in the project design phase, which means our engineers and designers are hard at work putting their ideas onto paper. We are still planning for construction to start in 2024. I will now hand this over to Mark from our design team to take you through some recent activities. Mark.
Thank you, Ramel. Once again, my name is Mark Wong, and I'm the Caltrans Design Senior on this project. As Ramel mentioned, we've been busy over the last several months putting our research on the paper. All of our Caltrans departments are underway on design work, and that includes electrical, environmental engineering, corridor management, hydraulics, landscape architecture, materials, right-of-way, traffic signing, and utilities. A few things to highlight. We've completed LiDAR mapping and photogrammetry of the project location, which, to those who are unfamiliar, is using sophisticated technology to accurately map the ground, as well as aerial photography to give us a pictorial representation of the roadway. Survey alignments have been generated. Tree locations and types have all been inventoried. Sidewalk and planter layout is underway, and coordination with PG&E is ongoing. This timeline summarizes where we are in the process and what's ahead. As many of you are aware, the final environmental document was completed in April earlier this year, and design began shortly thereafter. You'll see that we're approaching the time when we'll be determining important beautification elements of the road. Caltrans is also planning a public tree workshop for earlier next year, and Kimberly will talk more about that a little later. By this April, we plan to complete our 65% design package, which will include the plans, project specifications, and the engineer's estimate, also known as PS&E. We'll determine sidewalks, crosswalks, and planter layout, identify trees to be removed, identify properties that will need temporary construction easements to build driveways and retaining walls. And by next summer, we should have our 95% package complete. Our 95% package will finalize sidewalk design, planter design and locations, and finalize the trees to be removed. Following 95%, our completed design package is expected to be complete by early fall, followed by project advertisement shortly thereafter, and awarding the contract to a contractor in early 2024. As you can see here, this slide shows our proposed cross-section with the chosen option to underground utilities. We are confident that utilities will be undergrounded at this point, but do understand that some of the funding still needs to be secured. We're in regular contact with PG&E and the city about this issue, and we'll stay on top of it. And now I'd like to hand the presentation over to Kimberly White from our landscape design team to go through some visual simulations. Kimberly?
Thanks, Mark. Good evening, everybody. I'm Kimberly White. I'm the senior landscape architect for this project. I'm going to first review the simulations we were prepared for the visual impact assessment and environmental document. We selected 3 locations that represent both the variability of the project corridor and the areas where we anticipate more substantial impacts. These locations included Hillside Drive, Forest View Avenue, and Carroll Avenue. The first location is Hillside Drive. While most of us think of eucalyptus trees when we picture El Camino Real, there is a big variety of trees along the corridor. As is shown here, some segments are dominated by these different species. This location is one where substantial excavation is needed to replace drainage pipes along the curb on the right of this view. This construction impact will require tree removal due to unavoidable root damage. This image shows almost all new trees along the newly rebuilt road and sidewalks at about 20 years after construction. The foreground right of this view is at a corner intersection. You will notice that as opposed to the existing condition, the sidewalk is adjacent to the street here at the corner. So if we look closer down the block, you see the sidewalk is shifted with the trees and planter strip between the pedestrians and street. I will explain more about the reasons for jogging the sidewalk later, but briefly, this is an approach we are carrying forward to maximize the number of street trees we can plant while preserving clear visibility and safety for all users on El Camino at the intersections. Maximizing tree canopy, ensuring safety, and locating trees between sidewalks and street were all priorities identified by the community task force. This view is looking south near the intersection of Forest View Avenue. This is more of the classic view of what people think when they imagine Burlingame's El Camino with the towering eucalyptus trees lining both sides of the street. Unfortunately, we discovered with input from our independent arborist, Hort Science, that many of these trees have compromised health and structure. The large tree trunks and roots have also impacted the retaining walls on both sides of the road, and these will need to be replaced as a result. The damage to the tree's roots for this work would destabilize them, and we are expecting they will need to be removed. With the tree removal and rebuilt retaining walls, we do end up with the opportunity to relocate the planter strip and trees between the sidewalk and street. Here again, we are looking at the project about 20 years post-construction. We've shown eucalyptus on one side and elms on the other just to depict what the two main trees would look like. However, we aren't necessarily proposing that we approach the tree planting in this way, and we look forward to getting some further input on tree planting design at our tree workshop early next year. The last location is at the intersection where Carroll Avenue, Cypress Avenue, Bayswater Avenue, and Primrose all come together at El Camino Real. We are closest to Carroll looking southbound, and you'll see that there's a historic mid-century apartment building on the right. This is a location where we believe we can retain some of the large eucalyptus. You'll see most of the trees on the right side are the older preserved trees. Most replacement trees shown in this simulation are eucalyptus, again, just to demonstrate the possibilities. As I alluded to in the simulations with the jogged sidewalk configuration, sight distance is a primary concern for Caltrans in figuring out how many trees can be replaced. We are striving to implement this critical safety requirement while maximizing the tree canopy along El Camino Real. What we all realize is that given the variability of El Camino, there is not a one-size-fits-all solution. We have to design this project block by block. This plan view from Sanchez Avenue to Palm Drive shows the two-block segment that made up the task force pilot study area. This area captures the variety of conditions along the corridor and demonstrates the project's challenges. We use this same segment to explore tree replanting and sight distance considerations using a 3D model. First off, let's take a quick look at what Caltrans means by sight distance. So essentially, sight distance is the distance within which a driver has a clear, unobstructed view of the road ahead while moving at the road's design speed. Not surprisingly, greater visibility has been shown to reduce accidents, and Caltrans has specific safety guidelines that dictate sight distances. Here we will look at two types of sight distance: stopping sight distance and intersection or corner sight distance. The yellow area above shows the sight triangles required for stopping distance, and the orange triangles show the intersection or corner sight distance. These sight triangles are extremely important when considering the best location for street trees and how closely we can space them. This image shows a driver's view looking down El Camino from a driveway. On the left, you can see that when trees are set back behind the sidewalk, they fall outside of the sight triangle. In this condition, we can space larger trees more closely without impacting visibility. However, when the trees are closer to the curb, as on the right, they fall within the sight triangle. This means we need to space them farther apart and/or use trees with smaller diameter trunks to allow motorists a good view of oncoming traffic. Trees planted next to the curb at intersections fall within that red sight triangle, which means the trees will obstruct the motorist's view, affecting road and sidewalk user safety. The image on the left shows an overall view of a car approaching El Camino to make a turn, with another vehicle driving towards them. The second view on the right shows what the driver sees, which is basically a solid wall of tree trunks. They can't see the approaching car and will not realize it isn't safe to pull out into the road. This observation is what led us to the solution to meander or jog sidewalks. Near corners, we can keep the trees set back where visibility is crucial. Beyond the corners, we can then move the sidewalk away from the street. This approach allows us to plant the most trees along El Camino without impeding sight distances. I also want to highlight another visibility factor, which is trunk size. Here we see the difference between trees with a 12-inch trunk on the left and a 24-inch trunk on the right. The smaller trunk trees leave openings between them. So on the left, a driver can glimpse the approaching yellow car in one of these gaps. The 24-inch trunk trees create a solid wall blocking any view of the approaching car. Does this mean we have to plant all trees with small trunks? No, but it does mean that the mature size of trees needs to be kept in mind as we figure out what tree species go where and at what spacing. I hope this closer look at site distance and trees was helpful. Next, Frances Schirnbeck is now going to provide an update on cultural resources.
Thank you, Kimberly. And yes, my name is Frances Schirnbeck. I'm a senior environmental planner in the Office of Cultural Resource Studies. And this is Hemi. She's meowing in my lap. I'm an architectural historian. And as you know from the environmental document, we will be having an adverse effect to the Howard Ralston eucalyptus tree rows and to 3 other properties. The tree rows are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the 3 other properties are eligible for the National Register. Because we are having an adverse effect, we have a memorandum of agreement, or MOA, with the State Historic Preservation Office, which is for the resolution of the effects to the resources. We have been working closely with the Burlingame Historical Society throughout this process, and we will continue to do so. And one of the goals of this project is to try to keep these trees listed on the National Register. So in addition to replanting of the trees, Kimberly or Mark briefly mentioned that we will be having a public tree workshop. There are parameters about which trees we can plant because it is a National Register listed property, but Kimberly will go into this a little bit later on. We will have environmentally sensitive areas, which are ESAs, and those are for areas where there are historic elements that we don't want to be damaged by any construction activities, so we will fence them off. We will also be doing, we will also be doing the Historic American Landscape Surveys, or HALS, for the tree rows, and the Historic American Building Survey, or HABs, for the other properties. And what that is their very thorough documentation of the resources, which actually is done through the National Park Service, and they go to Washington, D.C. to be put on in their files. There will be photo documentation of the tree rows before, during, and after, and this is part of the HALS process, but also we want to have a good record of the trees from beginning and end to the project. There will also be a long-term maintenance plan for the tree rows, which we are doing in conjunction with the landscape office and our consulting arborist to have a long-term maintenance plan. So how we going to handle tree removals in the future, tree replanting, and those type of things will be captured in this maintenance plan. There also will be a historic resource management plan. There are a lot of other historic resources along the corridor, and this is just a tool that can be used by city planners to help them manage and look at how to deal with other historic properties along that corridor. And one thing I'm really excited about is our walking tour. This will be a walking tour of history through the tree rows. We'll start at one end, and there will be plaques inserted into the sidewalks. They'll start at one end with the Native American history and travel up through the tree rows to more current history. We're hoping to do this in conjunction with the city and the Historical Society and some of the tribes, most likely. So at the end of that, we will have a time capsule, and the time capsule, we would like to get input from all the cities and organizations that have been involved in the project, and potentially individuals. We don't know what the parameters are for submitting things yet, but we will be doing that. And then there will be a bench potentially in the same area that will be made out of one of the historic trees. And then all the trees will be re-tagged and GPSed. And this has to do with the maintenance plan. By having a tree number on every single tree and knowing the exact location, we can keep better track of the tree health and the health of the tree rows as time progresses. And then lastly, there will be an update to the National Register application. Again, our goal is to try to keep them listed, but we will need to update the application. So I will turn it back over to Kimberly, who will talk about the work.
So we are planning this tree workshop that we've mentioned multiple times this evening for early next year. I'm hoping that you all can join us for that. Hopefully it will be in person at the Burlingame Recreation Center. The workshop is meant to engage the community in a more detailed and design-oriented discussion of the tree rows and replacement trees. We'll review some topics we've presented at previous public meetings, such as the historic aspect of the tree rows and their current health and condition. We will then delve into the specific factors and design considerations that will inform what trees go where and how we can ensure they are successful. This will include information on street tree functions, safety, types of replacement trees, and sustainability. I look forward to getting more input from everyone as we develop our plans for this project. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time out of their busy schedules to join us here tonight, and we are happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you. Really appreciate the presentation. I think that this is a for us in Burlingame, it's a very important project. Our El Camino is very unique, and we hope to keep the character. And I just want to say thank you to my colleagues, Michael Brownrigg and Emily Beach, for participating in the subcommittee. And with that, I will open it for colleagues for any questions. We'll wait for comments at the end of the, after we have the public comments. So colleagues, any questions of the Caltrans staff? And I can't see hands, so please go ahead and, oh, I see Councilmember Colson. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My question is, I have two questions. The first is with regard to the engagement of Indigenous peoples around this. Can you elaborate a little more on that? What does that mean? What kind of engagement are you talking about? And
Sure, I can do that.
Manifestation of that.
Caltrans always engages the local tribes in any of our projects, and they were engaged for this project. I'm not an archaeologist, I'm an architectural historian, but I know that we did the engagement for this process, and we also did testing along the corridor, and there are no archaeological sites. But because we're going to be doing this history walk, we felt that it was appropriate to get their input into what, you know, the history of the area. They're very important to it, and we want their input. We don't want to just put something down about them. So that's how we're going to be collaborating with them.
Okay, so I don't know if that's the answer to my question. My question is more specific, like who do you engage and how do you engage them? So are you talking to the Ohlone Ramaytush?
Yes, they go through the shoot, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they do go through the Native American Center, and they get sent a list of who the local tribes are, and then they will engage with those local tribes.
I've done a lot of work in this, and there's a very, very small and very particular, most likely descendant pool on this work. And my work was a little more up toward Highway 280, but as we go on, I would like to I really want to make sure we're actually really using people who are, have, you know, the integrity of that process is really high. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if you had the chance to look over the environmental document, but all that stuff is outlined in there, who was contacted, all the letters are in there. And certainly if there's somebody in there you think that we missed, please let me know, and we will reach out to them when we get to the process of doing the plaques.
I'll double check that. And then the second one is on this tree workshop. And maybe this is a Lisa question. Is that going to be noticed for the full council, or is it a sit down and be quiet thing? Is it a participation thing? What's that?
So this is the first I know about it. So I'll have to get back to you because we're still in only September of 2022, and this isn't happening until 2023. So we're doing just-in-time service right now. So I will chat with our friends at Caltrans, but presumably all the council will want to be able to be there. So we'll notice it for all the council members. That's just my off-the-cuff thinking about it right now.
Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Council Member O'Brien had her hand up ahead of me.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing her. So Council Member O'Brien, I apologize for skipping you. Please go ahead.
No worries. A couple questions. So in regards to the trees, has the health of the trees, all of the trees been tested at this point, or you're still in that process?
We had an arborist review 211 of the 600 trees in the tree row. And the selection process for which ones they were going to review were ones that we knew were outside of very serious construction impacts. So if we knew we were going to have to do a huge amount of excavation next to a tree and the likelihood of being able to save that tree regardless of the health, that was not one that we prioritized for evaluation. So we focused more on ones that we wanted their input on in terms of, is this a good candidate for preservation? Will it survive this type of impact? So yeah, it was about 200 out of the 600. And we're
Okay.
continuing to consult with Hort Science as we go through the design process, get their feedback back on the best details we can use and procedures we can use to ensure saving as many trees as possible.
Okay, thank you. And then I think it would be very important too. You did mention a long-term maintenance plan for the trees, especially when I don't know how many new trees are going to be planted, but they need a lot of water initially. And
Yes.
so we just want to make sure that when they are planted, that there is a really good maintenance plan in place. The other question I had was, you mentioned something about retaining walls and easements. Do we know how many properties are affected? And then how does that communication happen if work has to be done on their properties?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and answer that. So we do have a preliminary list of all the temporary construction easements that we currently think we're going to need. So most of that has to do with the construction of reconstruction of the retaining walls or reconstruction of some of the driveways in order to get that conform in. We plan on communicating with most of these private residences through our right-of-way department and our public information officer. So we're still working on that as we continue through our 65 and 95%, and we get a better understanding of which exact properties we'll be able to which properties we're going to be affecting. We'll be able to reach out to those people individually.
And then does this affect then the water drainage? Because I know on the west side of El Camino, there's always been a lot of issues with that.
Yeah, as far as we can tell right now, it's not going to affect any drainage, but our hydraulics team is looking into that. We're still waiting on their preliminary design so we can take a closer look at what it's going to affect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien. And with that, Mr. Vice Mayor, could you go now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, quick thanks to the whole Caltrans team for this update. Very helpful. Really appreciate the work. Also, I note in the audience, Jennifer Pfaff, who was a crucial member of the Citizen Caltrans Task Force, which I was shocked, frankly, at how long ago that happened, looking at the timeline. But welcome to government, obviously, and big projects. But I would like to, I really am interested in Jen's input tonight. And I hope if she needs more than 3 minutes, we can give them to her, Mr. Mayor, just because of her unique position as both a member of the task force and a member of the Historic Society. And I want to thank Caltrans for opening this with the twin objectives that we've had for years of both improving the roadway and preserving the grove. This is arguably one of the most important infrastructure projects for Burlingame in several decades. I mean, it will be equaled with the Broadway grade separation, but I mean, this is hugely significant for the town. And so we've always been trying to strike that balance between making sure the road is safe, but that especially the tree canopy is preserved. And I think we're on the way. I am persuaded by your sightline presentation, Ms. White, that the sinuous nature of the sidewalk will allow for more trees. It works against one of the other priorities that we all wanted to establish, which was creating a buffer for pedestrians from this road where people are driving 40, 50 miles an hour. They shouldn't be, but they are. But I understand the benefit of that. And I think you are personally, I think you're right to make that trade-off, to get more trees, even at the cost of putting the sidewalk next to the road. And I'll finish with this. personally, to create a canopy, I'm not so concerned about the size of the trunk as I am about the spread of the branches. So I do hope, and this is why I'm particularly interested in Jen's input, that we pick species that will branch over the roadway and not look like the little lollipop trees 20 years later in the Amazon warehouse parking lot. That would be a failure on all of our parts if that happened. And for me, again, personally, I think consistency of species helps create a sense of canopy as well, not random species, which I think has quite a different look. So anyway, I will leave it at that and look forward to input from members of the audience as well. And again, thank you, Caltrans.
Thank you. Councilmember Beach, and I just ask you to please let's limit this one to questions. We'll wait for our comments at the end of the, so go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Caltrans team, and of course to the El Camino Real Task Force that helped us get here over many years. It's exciting to think we could be about 2 years from construction, so things are really moving in the right direction. I've been tracking all the different public meetings during the environmental phase, and this is a wonderful presentation, kind of big picture tonight. So thank you. My question is related to undergrounding those wires you mentioned, and I think we all agree how important that is, and certainly the city is investing to make sure we have appropriate credits to work with PG&E to get those wires undergrounded. And there's certainly a recognition. In fact, I heard a presentation from your the new District 4 Caltrans director about 2 or 3 weeks ago, just talking about the importance of undergrounding, not only from we're worried about aesthetics, but also the height of the trees, but also safety in the new world of wildfire and spark. So there's a lot of great reasons to be undergrounding. When is the moment where Caltrans needs to know, and when the funding has to be all lined up so that the plan can be executed? Can you give us a sense of the timing? Because I think that's a very important question.
I can try and tackle that, Councilman Beach. As for the undergrounding, we are constant communication with Burlingame, and you guys are heading up that effort. And since we are in the early design phase right now, I would say at 35%. I would say at the 65% timeline would be the absolute best time for us to hear whether undergrounding will occur or not. Efforts will continue. It's continuing. I meet regularly on a monthly basis with city staff and PG&E. And yeah, to answer your question, 65% would be a great time.
So if I noted correctly, 65% with my notes, it sounds like April 2023 is 65% time zone, because you're going to be summer of 23, you'll be 95%. Do I have that right?
Spring of 2023 is a good time. Yeah.
Okay.
Spring,
thank you, because that will certainly inform how high the trees can go and what types of trees, and even in the extreme heat we're having, the importance of having a really strong canopy for heat protection as well is just so important. All right, thank you for that clarification. The other question I had is, how are we coordinating bus stop design along El Camino Real? The Samtrans corridor, it's such an important one. And for folks who ride the bus, those protected bus stops are really important. They may not be for people who actually ride. And so how is Caltrans coordinating the design of bus stops along El Camino Real as we're rehabilitating the roadway?
Mark in design would have a good idea on that, but we have had past coordination meetings with Samtrans, specifically their bus routes. We have a good idea of where those bus stops are located, but as for design, Mark, we've been reaching out to Samtrans to try to coordinate further.
Yeah, and Samtrans, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you, keep going.
I was just going to say, and Samtrans has provided us their preferred design for both their bus pads and their bus stops. So we're working with them closely to determine these exact locations and designs.
That's great, because there's a huge opportunity there, particularly as we're meandering sidewalks and where the bus stops go, and to make those bus stops as functional and as comfortable for bus riders as possible. Thank you. And I'll be curious as the design goes on. I don't know if you have any comments, but also lighting, and Councilmember O'Brien mentioned irrigation. Just helping us understand how those trees will be irrigated along the way, not just maintenance plan of removal and replanting, but how do we maintain and make sure that there's a great irrigation system keeping those trees healthy as they grow. Thank you so much for really putting together a helpful presentation tonight, and great work.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. And I do have I'll have my question. It has to do with, especially with undergrounding all the utilities. One of the things we've been told about the tree roots is that they get hurt every time they dig a trench for the utilities. What do we do to avoid hurting the tree roots or the root systems in the going forward as part of this design? Is there something we do to make sure that doesn't happen moving forward?
Well, I can say one of the main things that we've been talking to PG&E about is how important it would be to have the trench for the utilities actually in the paved road section. More typically, they would put it under a sidewalk or even under the planting strip. However, that's not going to get us very far if we want to keep trees that we're able to keep and also plant new big trees. So that's a big thing we've made clear, that if this has continued to be a tree lined street, then the trees and the space that their roots needs to be a big part of the design considerations when we figure out where to underground and exactly how to do it.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great, I'm glad this is being thought about. Okay, with that, then we will now open it to members of the public. So I will hand the control to our city clerk.
Okay, the first one I have is Jeannie. So go ahead, you're unmuted. Jeannie?
Now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. This is in fact very helpful. I have some comments I'd like to read into the record, and they're mostly pretty general, but focused on the preservation. I'm really glad to see the care going into the project, including the design elements that are going to choices now determine the success or failure of the goals regarding the health of the grove. Things like anticipating the need to have access through the pavement instead of the tree root area. Also, I really want to compliment the traffic engineers for including the 10-foot traffic lane widths, at least in some places, as a potential choice. They're in the presentation, they're listed as 10 to 11 feet. Since there's, to my understanding now, a lot of data showing success in maintaining carrying capacity and safety, especially when coupled with more modern updates to the intersections, which are generally the points of congestion, the limiting factor. So I regularly get to enjoy the Palm Drive on the Stanford campus, where a major renovation was done some years ago, and 4 10-foot traffic lanes do now fit and function smoothly there in just the existing roadway. Plus which Stanford chose to use slot drains instead of continuous gutters to regain a little additional road width without any requirement to move the historic palm trees. So drainage was a big problem there beforehand. I have a couple of questions, and one is to understand what target speed for the overall design the engineers were working with. I don't need an answer to that tonight. I just want to put that question on the table. And whether, it sounds like some consideration has been given to phasing, but I'm guessing that there may be questions we don't even know to ask right now about what's underneath there, and that some lessons might be learned from early phases. And similarly, there might be, if we step back a little, some locations that would qualify as low-hanging fruit. For example, illustration number 10 in your presentation, where there are deficient crosswalk markings. Looks like they need some paint and some signage, and that could be done long before the contracts are in place for the overall project. So I am a direct descendant of the Howards in the pre-Gold Rush era and thereafter. It's my strong hope that the teams who've brought this project thus far can carry on and bring it to a success on all counts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joyce, you're next. Go ahead. Joyce, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry about that. Hi. First off, I'd like to say thank you for hosting this discussion tonight. And thank you, Vice Mayor Brownrigg. I share your thoughts regarding the canopy and reach of the replacement trees along El Camino. I have two questions. The first question, as a homeowner that lives directly on El Camino, I'm especially concerned about any potential right-of-way or easement encroachment. To be honest, it's a bit disconcerting to think that the public sidewalk could be moved and probably resituated right up under my windows. Mark Wong mentioned that there was a list of impacted properties that you're putting together. Could you kindly repeat when that list might be ready?
Yeah, so right now we still have that preliminary list. And as we get closer to the 65%, we expect to finalize that. So we're looking at early spring of next year. That list should become a little more substantial.
Okay, thank you. And last question. Will there be any point people assigned to the individual neighborhoods as the project moves forward? In other words, would there be someone that you could go to when you have more specific questions that are relevant to how the construction would affect your neighborhood or your property that you live on?
I would think that it's me, Ramel Pardo. I would think that would be on the public website, the Caltrans website for the project. You could always pose it on that and or contact our public information officer for any particular questions that you may have.
Next up is Lynn Israelite, and I'd remind the community that ask all your questions and then we can answer your questions after your public comment is done. So Lynn, you are next.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm on the Burlingame's Traffic Safety and Parking Commission, and I just had a few comments and questions. The first is that thank you for talking about that El Camino doesn't currently meet some of the site distance standards. When I looked at the diagram and the cones that you projected, so at least in your initial presentation, the cars were shown that set back from the intersection instead of actually being at the intersection where they would stop for a stop sign, and that would affect how big those triangles had to be and how many trees would be impacted. It looks like the slide was slightly different this evening where the car was actually all the way up at the intersection. So I just wanted to confirm that. If we are going to have meandering sidewalks, that implies then that we could have more trees. And I was a little confused as to why they would still need to be the smaller, perhaps 12-inch trunks as opposed to the 24-inch, which create that wall. If we do have meandering sidewalks at the intersections, that should open up the sight line according to your prior slide. So I'd like to get a better understanding of that, because obviously we do want as many trees and as many big trees as we can possibly have. My other question was, there should be some flashing beacon crosswalks on El Camino, especially around our elementary school, McKinley, which is sited right on El Camino. And I have personally witnessed some near accidents with crossing families and young children there. I know Millbrae has those. I actually don't like that kind because they're very confusing to drivers, even with the training videos that have been put out. But we do need something much more than just paint and we need some real obvious flashing beacons. And I would like to know how we can ensure that that is part of this project, because that's not something I've heard mentioned. And my third comment is just that there are blocks of El Camino where in the past there was no protection for the trees, and private property owners had removed all of the older mature trees and created big parking areas for their apartment buildings. I'm not sure that that's actually allowed. I don't know where the easement is compared to where private property lines are, but there are these blocks that are tree deserts where the trees had been removed in the past in like the 1970s. And I'd like to know if Caltrans is thinking about how to address that, and will those be included with new plantings to bring them more in keeping with the rest of the tree alley that we have and we're trying to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Israelite.
And next up is Jennifer Pfaff.
Hi there. Thank you for the nice comments, Michael and the others. I really appreciate it. Am I supposed to just ask questions? I guess I have some comments, but it sounds like you're on questions.
No, for the public, it's comments and questions. So go ahead, please, Jen.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm going to roll it way back to the undergrounding issue. And I know everyone would really like this to be the utilities be undergrounded for the benefit of those who maybe have not listened to this very much. It's incredibly important that they be undergrounded because there are above ground wires predominantly on the west side. And the rule with well, not only Caltrans, but it's mainly PG&E, is that the trees, any trees that go under wires are limited to about 25 feet. And so that's why they regularly massacre trees, the large ones that are under there, and new ones just simply won't be allowed. So it's extremely important that we get this done. And the council's been great and forward looking, and they've purchased cheaper credits, underground credits as part of an underground district, which is great. It's just that I understand that may not be enough. And so I'm a little in panic mode because I'm hearing that in April 2023 is sort of the magic line where we need to figure out what to do. And I think the whole success of this project hinges in so many ways on getting those wires underground. So I know you all know it here, but for the benefit of the public, I just wanted to say that it will determine so many things. For example, how tall the trees can be, the spread that Michael, that Vice Chair Brownrigg is mentioning, that is so important. Basically, this is a themed street. It's always been a themed street. It's themed street, eucalyptus and elm, and they're very large and spreading. And the canopy is so important, but it's just not going to be the same if we have only huge trees on the east side. So I did want to express that. And finally, I did have some other comments, but I know time is short. I really want to thank the forward looking theme of this group, Caltrans included, and our public works and parks and everybody involved, that everyone I think is on the same page to get this done right. It is so important. I can't express how important this is. It's not just about me, it's about Burlingame, it's about our kids, our heritage and everything. And I just hope we can continue this way. Really appreciate the work. I meet with Fran practically every month and discuss this or that issue, and she's been great. Landscapers have been great, and I know the engineers behind the scene are doing a great job on both for Caltrans and our city. So I really am hopeful, but I'm always a skeptic. So it's not over till it's over. So I did want to also say that dear Patty Poppy does her ads. I think it's a new spokesperson for PG&E, and my husband says, I hope they're not wasting all their money on these fancy ads and they're actually undergrounding. So maybe we can hit her up a little bit for help on the underground if we come up short. So thank you very much for everyone's work, and Michael and Emily also for your help with the ECR task force. Has been great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pfaff. And once again, thank you for your commitment to this process and for all your input. So really appreciate it. Any other comments?
Yes, we have one more that came in via email from Benito. He says, this is exciting to finally see the design process move forward. I urge our council to continue to be engaged and involved, as this is the most critical part of the project, as all the details are brought in. We all want a project that we will be happy inheriting in 2026. We don't want any regrets on design elements or have as what happened in the Broadway Interchange project, where there were things that could have been done better. Foremost on the design is that there are a handful of intersections on El Camino and Burlingame that are offset and not your standard 90-degree intersection. They also happen to be intersections that serve our schools and churches. These are also where pedestrians and bicycle crossing safety is critical. I'll highlight 3 such intersections. 1, ECR/Ray/Rosdale. This is the route to Lincoln Elementary and Burlingame Intermediate School. It also has a crossing guard, but also a main bike route with a bike path along El Camino that is used to cross west of ECR or continue along until BART. This intersection is offset. It makes it difficult for drivers to turn and yield to each other and school kids. Even with a crossing guard, the bike ped path is complicated. There have been crashes there. Second, ECR, Adeline, Oxford, Cambridge. This is the route to Lincoln Elementary, BIS, and Our Lady of Angel School. It too is a crossing guard, also with a bike path connecting along ECR. This is a challenging intersection to get across, and yet dozens of families cross it every day. 3, ECR, Fairfield. This is not signalized, but this is a Y-shaped intersection that allows for fast turns right next to the school. I hope the project team realigns the curve to slow down the turns and make school crosswalks safer. The devil's in the detail is such a poor cliche, and yet that is exactly where we are. I hope there to be continued dialogue between the state and the city for the best possible product. Thank you. And that is it.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And then with that, we'll go back to my colleagues for any final comments. I see Councilmember Coulson, you raised your finger. Mute, you're on mute.
Vice Mayor can go first. It's fine.
Oh, very good. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Okay, so I got this backwards. I did comments the last time and now I have a question, Mr. Mayor. So, in this process, which we've all been involved with for years, I think all of us, or at least I have definitely focused on the majority of El Camino Real, which is the iconic, eucalyptus lined part. I am interested in 2 things. One, the answer to Ms. Israelit's question about, are we planning to take some of those parking aprons and replant, or how do we think about that? Because I don't recall that being discussed very much. And then the second part, in looking at the scope of work and recognizing that it goes all the way to Millbrae Avenue, what are we thinking about the area of El Camino that is basically from the hospital up to the border, where our El Camino widens and looks much more like El Caminos elsewhere? Are we thinking at all of being creative with that space or leaving it alone? And also recognizing that Millbrae is going through its own redesign, thinking about El Camino. So it's more a question of how much time and effort have we put, if any, into that section of El Camino. So roughly from
Dufferin to Murchison.
Yeah, up to Murchison, exactly, yeah.
And
anyways,
a way to get rid of that ugly cyclone fence?
Well, the way to make the sidewalk instead of that meandering dirt path, which is dangerous. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, and we really have, at least I don't think we focus very much on that smaller section. So thank you.
Completely agree. Okay, and Caltrans, I'm sorry, for the team from Caltrans, so there were some of the questions that were raised by some of the members of the public. If you guys want to take a second and answer the Vice Mayor's question, plus some of the other concerns that were raised.
I guess I jotted down a few things that I noted that I can maybe clarify a little bit. There was one question about the trunk width. Why would we need to consider the size of the trunk if, as I said in the presentation, we were proposing to keep trees away from the corners or set back from corners? And actually the answer to this question also perhaps answers Vice Mayor Brownrigg's question as well. And that's just to go back to, this corridor is so variable that it really is going to have to be designed block by block. And so that definitely includes the northern section. That is a very different configuration than the rest of the corridor that we've been spending more time talking about and looking at. It also means that, again, this kind of ties a couple questions together too with the driveways. So one of the situations where maybe we need 12-inch or smaller trunks is immediately adjacent to driveways. I don't know if that's really the answer, but I'm just putting it down out there as an example. So if we do have sidewalks or the planting strips in between the road and the sidewalk near a driveway, maybe if we want to get trees closer to the driveway, we might consider trees with a smaller trunk in those situations. Again, we won't really know those things until we really start looking at it very closely and block by block. And then again, related to driveways and the fact that there are some stretches where the trees have been completely removed and it's almost continuous driveways. I think that's going to be a tricky question. I'm not sure exactly how it gets solved, but I can assure you that as a landscape architect, I'm very aware of that. And you know, I know Jennifer has also brought it up to us before, and we will be looking at that. I will be looking at that because I don't want to see those long stretches without trees. That doesn't give you the feeling that we're all going for in this corridor.
Thank you for that. Okay, thank you. Any other comments from our team from Caltrans? I don't see any raised hands, so I'm going to go to Councilmember Colson.
Thank you. So my question is, I also have a little bit of another question that came about, which is following back up on the undergrounding of these utilities. I know we bought a bunch of very, very discounted utility credits. And so my question is, how short are we with regard to funding to finish those credits off? Thank you, Syed. It looks like you're going to be able to answer this. And because I know we also have some other funds sitting in an account. So just on the financial picture, where are we with that?
Thank you, Councilmember Coulson. So when we originally identified the concept of undergrounding El Camino Real, the discussions with PG&E regarding what it would take to do that work came up with a roughly $25 to $30 million approximate budget. That was a few years ago. That was a budget number, and we have approximately a little over $17 million in the PG&E Rule 20A funding. And then right now, we do not know for sure as to what exactly the funding gap would be, or there would be a funding gap actually, because that we'll be able to say know that after we do a detailed design. And so that would be, I would say, in the next by the end of this year, we will have better ideas about the estimates, engineering estimates. And also I'd like to take this opportunity to address a couple of concerns brought up earlier, is that staff is working very, very closely with PG&E, Caltrans, and having meetings on a regular basis, bi-weekly basis, to look at the design, where the trench will go, the joint trench will go, and how far it will be. And Caltrans has provided their design, and PG&E is taking that and working. They have hired a firm. My understanding is that they're allocated funding, and we are hoping that we will have a better timeline from PG&E. But the idea is that this project will go with undergrounding. coordinated with PG&E, either Caltrans taking the lead in construction or PG&E taking the lead before as part of the construction, while Caltrans is doing other components of work and PG&E is going in the middle. So this project, by all means, it's considered to be undergrounding the overhead lines, regardless. That's the goal. Regarding funding gap, there are a couple of opportunities we are looking at. The latest PG&E rule 20 rule changes provides PG&E the ability to get more funds that are unutilized from other previously collected Rule 20 funds. If the funds have been credited, but there are no projects, those funds could actually pay for some of these projects. So there's that opportunity. But also we're working with Caltrans to see what Caltrans can do to participate in funding. And those are ongoing discussions. We don't have any firm answer from Caltrans, but at highest level at Caltrans, we're working with looking for their contribution to address the gap if and when that occurs. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Martuza. And I see Councilmember Beach. I'm going to skip for a moment to Mr. Pardo to see apparently you have some additional information.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to piggyback on what Fayed was saying, yes, Caltrans, we have been meeting with PG&E in the city of Burlingame, and not only meeting on a regular basis, we've actually shared some even very preliminary design information with them and working with their design consultant as well. So yes, we do. We have been working closely with them. We do understand that there is a highly likelihood of most probable this project is an undergrounding project. Absolutely said. We understand that, but you know, we as we go through this process, we're still in the very preliminary stages of design, and you know, as we get closer, 65-95% will be that much more confident in the undergrounding and in design. So I guess to circle back to Councilmember Beach, please don't. I want to kind of reiterate, it wasn't a drop dead date of April for the funding. We understand there's $18 million funding. The drop dead time for the funding of the undergrounding is actually at 100%, which is at just before we go to construction. But just you asked the question, I gave the answer. I guess the second thing, just to circle back on one of the questions, was I guess one of the public Joyce mentioned about right-of-way encroachment. This project has no plans to encroach or take additional right-of-way. We're going to stick within the established Caltrans right-of-way. So no additional right-of-way will be taken on this project. We will stick on the footprint that's out there, and that's what we're planning on doing. So hopefully I try to hit two questions with one stone. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And there's Councilmember Beach. Did you have any final comments?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just my final comments are just huge thanks to Caltrans. Really, the original vision of the task force to preserve the character of the Grove and then to improve safety for these different modes is just, you've taken it to heart. The fact that you're designing block by block really shows your commitment, and the coordination you're having with our staff and with our historical society. Just, I applaud you. So thank you so much for the incredible effort. And I do appreciate the thorough discussion and the questions on undergrounding, how, you know, $17-18 million worth of credits is a huge lift for a little city like ours. So we hope that there will be grant opportunities or partnerships at the state level with all the infrastructure money coming in, with a recognition of safety aspects of undergrounding, that we can find the necessary funds, and hopefully Caltrans can help us get there. I am so excited about the historical walk and the mitigation efforts that we're going to have. We could really make it something special and beautiful, just a whole nother component or just an enhanced component of El Camino Real, this Grand Boulevard. And I hope as we're doing the final design, my last comment is really making this to really improve the livability for the people who use and live along El Camino Real. It's such an opportunity. I know we're focused on the trees, we're focused on the infrastructure, but making sure that infrastructure is really working, those intersections are safer for crossing, as various public comments, those east-west connections, comfortable, safe bus stops, lighting, sidewalks that are wide enough for multiple modes or people to use them. Yes, we do have cycling routes and people should be using other routes for different things, and it'll be pedestrians, but there will be people do cycle sometimes on El Camino. And how can we make sure those sidewalks are really livable and have enough space for people to use and enjoy? I think this project has the potential to be the most beautiful, livable, and well-maintained section of El Camino Real on the whole California 82. And it's just so exciting to think that we could be about 2 years out from construction. So thank you so much for all you've done to help us get there. We look forward to next phases.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you. I have to agree with everything you said. So that very nicely put. What nice way to wrap it up. Colleagues, any other final comments? With that, I just want to say, I echo what Councilmember Beach said. Thank you to you all. And we really do feel that you understand how important El Camino is and our unique El Camino it is for Burlingame and how important our trees are. And appreciate you guys going out of your way to listen to us. So thank you very much. And with that, good night, and appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
with that, thank you. We will move on to item number 6C, which is the Neighborhood Bicycle Boulevards Project. Let me see, Mr. Mertuzza.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is me again. I'll do a brief introduction here. Mayor and Council, following the completion of and adoption of the city's bike ped plan, city staff has been working to advance many of the projects identified in the bike ped master plan based on the priorities. Several projects have already received grants as a result and are in the process of being implemented, such as California Drive. And we've also recently recommended for another major project, Rollins Road. We are waiting for MTC's decision on it. But tonight, what we are bringing to you is bike boulevards that was identified as one of the higher priorities as part of the bike ped plan. And staff has been working to develop concepts of that project and has had several meetings with the Traffic Safety Commission community members, including the community BPAC. Andy Wong, senior engineer, will be making a presentation to provide you an update. Megan, is Andy here? Can you upgrade him to panelist?
Yep, he should be joining us now.
Great, thank you. Andy, you can come in and share your screen. Andy, you're muted and we can't see your screen. There you are.
It was set up. Thank you, Director Mertuzza. Mr. Mayor, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, members of the public. As the director indicated, I'll be presenting the Neighborhood Bicycle Boulevards project update. Specifically for this phase, we're talking about Carmelita, Paloma, Cappuccino Mills, and Grove. So if I can do this right. I think everyone can see it. All right. As we talked about, we'll go over a quick.
We can't see it yet.
Sorry, Megan. Are we there now?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Now go to the. Yeah.
We'll go over an overview of tonight's presentation. We'll go through the background of it. We'll go through the timeline and how we got to where we are tonight through the public outreach process. We'll look at what the Traffic Safety Parking Commission and community looked at, the initially study project concepts. We will come back and give you what they had for the public feedback. And then we'll go through what we presented as a revised project approach and concepts. We'll summarize everything and then give you what the next steps are, as well as get feedback from you guys. So let's get started. What is a bicycle boulevard? A bicycle boulevard is a shared roadway intended to prioritize Bicycle travel for people of all ages and abilities. Bicycle boulevards are typically sited on streets without large truck.
Andy, we can't see your, you need to move the slide. It's stuck. It's slide number 2.
Are we there?
Oh, still on the overview.
Yeah, you need to get to the 3rd slide.
Yes. Are we on Bicycle Boulevard? I'm sorry, I can't see.
What is a bicycle boulevard? That's the
I'm
slide
sorry.
that we're looking at.
There?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, no.
Okay. And where I said the Bicycle Boulevard is a shared roadway network intended to prioritize bicycle travel for people of all ages and abilities. Bicycle boulevards are typically sited on streets without large trucks or transit vehicles, and where traffic volumes and speeds are already low or can be further reduced through traffic calming. Just for folks out there, a bicycle boulevard and a class 3 bicycle facility are the same thing. It's a shared facility. So the bicycles share the roadway, as this picture depicts, shares the roadway with bicycles, unlike a class 2 or bike lane where bikes have their own route or roadway to ride in. For us, these class 3Bs will provide routes between the neighborhoods to parks, schools, community areas, as well as civic facilities, and will enhance and add connectivity to the city's existing bicycle network. So looking at the network, this is the existing bicycle network we have right now. As you can see, we've got a lot of north-south roadways, but not a lot of connectivity east-west. And if you look at it specifically like the Lion Hogue area and the center of town here, it's kind of bare. So if you look at the next slide, it'll show these are the class 3E facilities as determined in our 2020 bicycle pedestrian plan. You can see Lion Hogue's filled up, and definitely the center of town has a lot of facilities. In yellow, we're looking at the roadways, Paloma, Cappuccino, Mills, Grove, and Carmelita. On your presentation, just a note, something moved, and so the map actually shows a little offset. This presentation shows where the roadways go. How we got here, timeline. This was all started with the adoption of the 2020 Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan. That provided the framework and vision for the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure moving forward. That plan provided locations and priorities for our class 3B facilities. Ranked high there was the Carmelita Paloma neighborhood bike routes, and that included Carmelita, Paloma, Cappuccino, Mills, Grove, and it's one of the higher priorities in that document. It will provide not only alternate north-south routes, but will connect the residential neighborhoods and downtowns. Staff have previously presented this to the Traffic Safety and Parking Commission in February and May of this year. In addition, staff was able to obtain additional feedback from the community BPAC on Bike to Work Day. Following all that feedback, staff in July was presented a revised approach and concepts to the community. At that meeting, both the Traffic Safety Parking Commission as well as the community BPAC supported the revised concepts and approach. And that brings us to tonight. So jumping into some of the things that we previously looked at back in February and March, we looked at bicycle slots. Going back a little bit. Previously, when the council adopted the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, some comments were made. They wanted stuff aspirational. They wanted something that really belonged to our community. So we took that to heart when we made some of these initial concepts. As you look, we have the bicycle slots here, and where we could, we tried to introduce class 2 bike facilities. Even though we were still looking at class 3B, we thought maybe we can push the envelope a little bit. So we looked at those. We looked at greenback sharrows as well as speed cushions. And then lastly, we looked at, on some of our narrower streets, bi-directional sharrows. They're just sharrows just a little closer together, but indicating two-way travel on on our streets. We also looked at 444 crosswalks. If you look at the slide below here, it's a high visibility crosswalk with a slot through the middle, as well as some reflectors for each direction. It grabs the driver's attention a little bit. With also those reflectors, it's a little bit more visible at night. We also looked at traffic circles and splitter islands that you see, and this is in the Lion Hogue neighborhood. But those are some of the things we looked at trying to incorporate. Some of the public feedback we got were these improvements should be considered quick build, and quick build projects are done mostly with signing and striping. There were some concerns with the 444 crosswalks. They were concerns, they've got the reflective pavement markers, the reflectors in the ground, and that adds a little vertical to it. So there were some concerns about running those over maybe at night. We had a lot of support from the neighborhoods for speed cushions, and specifically one street, and we'll go on later and talk about that. There were concerns from the bicycle community at the intersections. They wanted to have the vehicles slow down as they approach the intersections just to improve the safety there. And we have some ways of looking at that. Some of the things we try to do is introduce some new facilities by maybe altering or introducing parking restrictions that would allow us to put another bicycle or an enhanced bicycle facility on there. The community they wanted to try to maintain that on-street parking and not include any new restrictions. There were some concerns regarding, we had looked at some striped bulb outs, some of the stuff that you've seen in the Lion Hogue area, as well as the traffic circles. But there was also some concerns there regarding accessing the other streets, the turns around some of those, as well as maybe vehicles and bicycles simultaneously going around the circle and cars maybe veering into paths of bicycles, some of that concern. Lastly, they talked about consistent facilities through the network. On some locations, say Paloma, Cappuccino, where we had one-way sections, we actually had the width to introduce a class 2 bike facility. But some of the thoughts there were the concerns with having consistent facilities from block to block to block. So hence we're staying with some class 3B facilities there. So based on the feedback we received, we returned in July with a revised concepts, as well as a phased approach for the implementation of the bike boulevards. The initial phase and a secondary phase, and I put if necessary on that, and we'll talk about that. The initial phase would be install greenback sharrows. This will be generally 4 per block and 2 on each side of the streets. So for example, one-way streets would only have 2. Staff would review red curbing at certain intersections as well, and any additional signage that includes advanced warning signs as well as potentially stop signs. And we'll talk about that at one location. And we're going to jump this one a little bit, but because of the feedback we received for speed cushions on regarding speed cushions on Carmelita, we're going to move ahead with that on this initial phase. And we'll talk about what I mean by that when we get to secondary. If a class 3B facility is on a street where a CIP project is under design, the process would allow for improvements to be included on the plans, shortening the implementation project schedule. This just means any class 3B facility that's currently in the bike ped master plan, our capital improvements group will take a look at those streets that they're working on, see if there's one on there. And so they'll go ahead and put the bicycle boulevards on those streets, go ahead and show those improvements. And lastly, before reviewing the before and after traffic data, we'll be using the streetlight data to do that. We're recommending a monitoring period of at least a year before considering phase 2. So we look at the secondary or phase 2. These are identify the other roadway improvements. If we don't get the desired traffic speed reductions, we'll look at installing what we had previously talked about, the speed cushions, the traffic circles, channelizers, bulb outs, 444 crosswalks, and splitter islands. So we're not introducing them initially, but we're keeping them in the program. So if we don't achieve those speeds. So let's talk about mills. Let's look at the entire network. These are the streets we're looking at here, mills between California and Cappuccino. We're simply here, we're putting in greenback sharrows. Again, a pair here, and there's a pair at the next intersection at Laguna. Where we can, certain intersections, we'll go ahead and improve the crosswalks. And at this location at California Mills, we're going to go ahead and introduce, there's not currently a crosswalk there, but we'll put a high visibility crosswalk. Moving on to Grove, similar, greenback sharrows, and we're going to enhance existing crosswalk with high visibility treatment. Then moving on to Cappuccino. Cappuccino, we start getting a little different here. The road narrows up, so we're going to go ahead and introduce the bi-directional sharrows here. Looking here, we're also going to introduce the, enhance the high visibility crosswalk, as well as look at red curbing to enhance the visibility of bikes and peds from drivers. Next, Cappuccino, the one-way section, we're going to go with, again, the greenback sharrows, but just a couple along that block. Paloma also is going to match, kind of mirror images Cappuccino. Where it narrows up, we're going to have bi-directional sharrows, enhancing the crosswalks and introducing red curb. What happens differently at specifically Paloma Carmelita, we're recommending an all-way stop. Currently, it's stopped in Paloma. We're going to go ahead and install stop signs along Carmelita. These stop signs not only provide folks stopping there, but they're going to also introduce traffic gaps along the Carmelita corridor. The adjacent intersections, folks, bikes and peds will be able to have a gap where they'll be able to now enter Carmelita, where vehicles have slowed down and stopped at Paloma. Lastly, Carmelita. Carmelita, again, we talked about all-way stops, but what we're going to do along the corridor here, this is the one location or one street that we're going to introduce the speed cushion, rubberized speed cushions, much that's the same ones that we've approved with County Fire along in the Lion Hogue area. We'll be using these. Again, these are going to provide gaps. Folks are slowing down, which will address some of the BPAC's concerns at the intersections. So again, let's go back, summarize. As a big part of the program, we will be installing the greenback sharrows. We will review site distance at intersections as well as any additional signage. And in this particular location, a stop sign at Carmelita and Paloma. We're going to advance speed cushions on Carmelita due to the feedback we received. Again, if a class 3B facility is on a street where the capital improvement is under design, we're going to go ahead and put that in there, improving the or helping the capital improvement side for their project scheduling. And lastly, we're going to review all the before and after data using our streetlight data system. Secondary phase, if necessary, if we don't see a speed reduction, we're going to go ahead and introduce additional speed cushions, traffic circles, and we'll design those, and those will go forth to the Traffic Safety Parking Commission when we move forward with that. The estimated cost, construction cost for this phase is approximately $300,000. And like I previously said, both the traffic safety and community BPAC supported the phased approach concept to implement the Class 3B facilities. Again, what we're seeking tonight is feedback from the council. And if we will take that feedback back, revise the finalize the phased approach. Lastly, staff will pursue any grant opportunities to obtain funding for the project, and we'll explore other opportunities to incorporate improvements as part of the other projects feasible contingent upon funding availability. Just means if we have our capital improvement projects, we're going to seek to incorporate the improvements there. So with that, I thank you for your time. I apologize for the mess up earlier, but I look forward to taking your feedback.
Okay, colleagues, let's try to do this. Let's just ask questions of staff right now. We'll do the public comment and then we'll open it up for comments from colleagues. So with that, colleagues, any questions of Mr. Wong? I don't see any hands being raised. I see Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Wong, for the presentation and for staff continuing to move forward the vision of the bike ped master plan. There are so many grants available, and Director Mertuzza mentioned a few that Burlingame is one, but there's even more than that as far as planning and bike programs and more coming from the Transportation Authority and MTC. It's just really, really great to see staff working so hard to get these projects in a planning phase so we can take advantage of those grant opportunities. So bravo. And this is, to enhance our low stress bike routes is a very different kind of project. It really incorporates more people who might consider cycling if they feel safer on these low stress bike routes. So my question is, I have a couple. In phase one, is my understanding correct that the only proposed change to stop signs, whether east, west, or north, south, occurs at Paloma and Carmelita? Is that true? Or are there any more stop signs planned along the bike boulevards that will either be studied or potentially implemented?
Through the mayor, at this time, yes, Carmelita Paloma is the only stop sign recommended at this one. We can look at others, but for this phase of the project, it's just that one.
Okay, so this phase of the project recommends the green paint on the ground, some red paint to prevent parking from being really close to the curbs to improve visibility, and then the high visibility crosswalks, and then that one stop sign. And it sounds like the speed cushions on Carmelita as well is now phase one. Okay. Was there a discussion about a potential bike signal on as cyclists cross Broadway, so that rather than pressing a pedestrian signal on some of those high visibility crosswalks, was there any discussion about cyclists being able to press a button for a bike signal?
Through the mayor?
Yes, please.
There was. We got some feedback regarding that, and we took a look at it, and staff has concerns with that approach because as when a push button is hit and the beacons go off, primarily drivers are looking at the crosswalk to see, and again, this is a warning device. They're looking at seeing if pedestrians are crossing. Sometimes seeing none, maybe the pedestrian is left and the blinkers are shown, they're able to continue. There's no stop to it. It's a warning device. So the concern is if a bicycle goes there and it starts crossing and the driver isn't looking for the cyclist, there may be concerns with collisions possible at that location. So that said, staff is also, we've gotten some feedback about other agencies that have done this, and we've reached out to them and we've started, and they haven't gotten back to us, but we are following up on that. And if that is something that we, or the council decides we can move forward, would like to move forward with, we can do that. But we're trying to obtain some additional information right now.
Okay. And then my final question is, I'm always astounded at the price tag of paint. $300,000 for phase one for some green sharrows, red paint, and some crosswalks. But I think a really important component of this would be that what's mentioned in the report, the need to study it to see, hey, is this infrastructure really making things safer, slowing people down? Does that $300,000 budget incorporate the data 1 year later to look at the streetlight data and do the counts and see, are we getting the results of traffic of slowing and making it safer? Or is that in addition, we're going to have to find more budget for that? Should we get a grant?
And the streetline data, we have access to it now. So we're able to obtain before and after data. It's based on, if folks that don't know it, your cell phone, this technology is able to ping your cell phone. Just think of taking like 1,000-foot view where you can see little dots and where you're moving, not specifically who a particular person is, but the dots moving. You can trace that. Not only can you trace where it came from and where it ended, you're able to obtain speeds of where that is, and you're able to count them, the volumes. So we can do that now. So that's not going to be anything additional, but it will require staff time to do it. We're not going to concern about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Veach. I see Councilmember O'Brien.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So in regards to the speed cushions on Carmelita, how is that determined it was needed? Were you tracking the speeds of cars on Carmelita?
Through the mayor, we're just proposing it. So we invited, there were over 400 notices sent out for the Traffic Safety Parking Commission meetings. And it was proposed that we haven't shown the ultimate location, but we show speed cushions along Carmelita from Vancouver all the way to California. And so we got a lot of response that they were supportive of that because of speeding concerns currently along Carmelita. So
I understand the concerns that have been brought up, but have you actually have measurements of speed on Carmelita data to back that up?
We do have some. The folks are let's see, let's look. We're close to 30 miles an hour along that stretch.
To the mayor, if I may answer that question, yes, there have been historical concerns about the speed on Carmelita, and given at the times, especially in the morning and evening hours, there have been excessive speeds. Some range, it depends on what year you're looking at. We have generally on average 30 miles an hour speed, where it's 25 miles posted speed limit. But at times there's certain contingent of vehicles that speed really at high speed. So we do have those, but they may not be 85th percentile, but there's a small contingent. So there's definitely a concern for speeding.
Okay, and then those speed cushions, then do they go throughout Carmelita? I mean, are they at certain intersections, or how are you determining that?
Through the mayor, yeah, I mean, because it's a direct path to California to Broadway. It's the entire section, but
Okay.
we'll get some newer counts, but again, that's primarily the concern of the residents along that stretch.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. And then my last question is kind of a generalized question. I know you've done a lot of improvements in the Lion Hogue area. So were there any kind of pleasant surprises of implementing so many different types of speed reducing and increased visibility? Were there things that worked better than others? I'm just kind of curious how that's all gone.
To the mayor, I'd like to just initially respond to one part of the question. Yes, we have seen a lot of positive impact and have heard from the residents. We will be coming to City Council providing an update later this year as to how what is working, what needs to be done regarding future phases. So, but I'll let Andy talk about the positive feedback, particularly related to the speed cushions and the lane line, the shoulder lines. Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you, Director. Yes, the comments we've gotten are, I think folks would want some additional speed cushions out there. Some of the comments also, they think they're serving their purpose. They are slowing vehicles down. Some folks think they're maybe a little too slow. They would like reduced ones, but we've worked these speed cushions out with county fire, that they're able to go through them. So we're most likely going to stick and use these and use them throughout. We're Vice Mayor Brownrigg, we talked about this up at Mercy, and it's something that we're going to go ahead and still use those up there. I mean, they're consistent in the ones that we're doing, so they'll be same throughout the city. So everyone's going to get used to them if that's the direction we move to. But yes, those speed cushions have been. We've gotten a lot of favorable feedback.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien. And I do have a follow-up question to this one. I'm still not clear, and I think that the Councilmember O'Brien was trying to find is exactly where on Carmelita these speed cushions are going to go, or have we not determined that?
Yeah, we haven't exactly determined the exact location yet, but the what you saw tonight was a concept as to where just on Carmelita these speed cushions will go. We are still evaluating as to how many and at which location. So the details will follow. We haven't finalized any of that. That will come as part of the design.
Perfect. And is there any public input when determining where these cushions are going to go?
Absolutely. There will be the direct community input process, and that will involve the residents themselves that are living on that street, because the same residents who came and spoke in support of that that live on Carmelita, they're in favor of it. But again, we have to make sure that when the rubber hits the road, it's in front of their home, and they still need to support it.
I like that, when the rubber hits the road. Very nice. Colleagues, any other questions? I don't see any hands raised, so we will open it to members of the public, and then we'll come back to colleagues for final comments.
I don't see any hands up, but I do have an email. And it's from Manito, and he states, sorry, my kitten is hyperactive at the moment.
Seems to be the topic of the night.
Seriously. I'm a resident of a bike boulevard. I live on Cappuccino. This project has been disappointing as a resident. The communication from the consultant has been poor. They misled and angered our neighborhood by saying they're proposing class 3 bike lanes on our narrow streets, which freaked everybody out. There's no such thing as a class 3 bike lane. One, the original project goals were described over a year ago by the project team as to make these streets suitable for riders of all levels. Tonight, the goal is now apparently to provide routes and add connectivity. Clearly, this project has veered away from its original goals and reset the bar. The title on the agenda item is Bike Boulevard Project, but in truth, it's just a bike stencil project. 2, painting bike stencils and painting of red curbs will not slow down drivers, nor will they change traffic at all to make it comfortable and safer to ride. A couple of speed bumps on a couple of blocks on Carmelita is good, but how about the other blocks? How about the other streets? 3, it is really unfortunate that the consultant spent time proposing ideas that were not feasible, not workable, and out of context for Burlingame. They got paid their $70,000 focusing on the wrong things. Sorry, get out of here. And ultimately ran out of time and money. The fact that the consultant couldn't even be here is sad. What the neighbors and advocates I've heard through this process is safety at the intersections. What we want is safe crossings when these routes cross busy and fast streets, like the safety of riding along Paloma having to cross Broadway, a street so notoriously tough to cross. There's been a recent spat of pedestrian crashes. How do riders and pedestrians get across Paloma/Lincoln and Paloma/Grove? I've advocated for Carmelita and Paloma as an all-way stop for years, and this too was proposed by BPAC and discussed as an all-way stop, but the consultant denied it and said staff was against it for several months. 5, lastly, the $300,000 price tag for this first phase seems out of scale since phase 1 being proposed is mostly paint. How can it cost that much? Lastly, I think it's important to be clear on what data is being collected and reviewed exactly, and important to be transparent about the thresholds or metric of what will trigger going to phase 2 and on what schedule. This project was said to apply lessons learned from the Lion Hogue traffic calming experience, but there actually has not been any after studies on Lion Hogue even over a year later. The true lesson is to maximize transparency and communication so people know what's next and when, and to do things that actually make a difference rather than just instill a false sense of accomplishment that some paint was put on the ground. Our taxpayer monies and communities' efforts are far too precious to let it go to waste.
Thank you.
Yep, and then I don't have any more emails on this, and I don't see any hands up.
Very good. So with that, we'll bring it back to colleagues. Who would like to start us off with their final comments? Okay, I see everybody's being shy today, so I will get it started. I think that it's important that we take action and we do some of these improvements. I have personally received a lot of complaints about speed on Carmelita. And I think that it's time that we do something. I think the stop sign at Paloma is a great beginning. And I think the speed cushions are going to be very helpful too. So I'm looking forward to hearing back the results of our measurements once we're done, and look forward to seeing this go forward. Councilmember Beach.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think I concur. I think it's got to be an iterative approach. We don't have all the funding in the world. We'll hopefully get some grants. We'll try something and make it better. I do think I really appreciated that Mr. Wong started the presentation with the definition of a bike boulevard, which is prioritizing bicycle travel for all ages and abilities. And that's something that's really important to think about. And what we hear from our BPAC, what we hear from traffic safety parking, what we hear from best practices is we got to make sure those intersections for cyclist crossing are safe on these low stress routes. So I think studying them with the streetlight data is going to be important. I think, as Councilmember O'Brien mentioned, really learning best practices from Lion Hogue, we need to understand that. I suspect, I have a big hunch that putting the green sharrows on the ground, putting some red paint to eliminate, to provide more street visibility for parking, and doing these crosswalks aren't going to make the intersections a whole lot safer for cycling flow along these bike boulevards. I think we're going to have to go to phase 2 to do that infrastructure, to do the green infrastructure, which can serve multiple purposes, to do the little, traffic circles or the ballards or whatever it may be, to do more traffic calming or more of these cushions to make sure that the cyclists have the priority. The other thing I hope, I'm really glad to see that the Carmelita and Paloma stop sign is going to happen, because the bike boulevards, when done well in cities, they allow traffic to stop so cyclists either have priority and they can continue through. I hope we'll take a close look at how the stop signs are designed on these bike boulevards. Do we really need 4 ways? Do we need 2 ways where we allow cyclists to slow down and traffic to stop, auto traffic to stop? I hope we'll take a look as we evolve and iterate on this, how the stop signs should be designed. And I hope there's opportunities for more infrastructure to really do traffic calming and slowing. I think that, I guess my last comment would be, it's kind of exciting to see this part of the master plan being envisioned. It seems to me that maybe the next phase, or maybe staff can take a look at, also Vernal provides that north-south low stress bike route on the other side of El Camino Real. And you guys know best about how to phase this, but I think that's one to keep an eye on, to make sure folks on the other side of El Camino have a safe bike boulevard as well, to connect some of these key spots. And hopefully, if we do this right, it'll get people who would never consider traveling on California Drive, because 35, 40 miles an hour, even with a protected lane, they might not like that. But to try cycling, if on these safe, low stress routes, they feel safer and more protected. And I do think it was a really good move not to try to draw class 2 bike lanes on some of these narrow. They just need to share the streets, and let's do the infrastructure in a way that makes cycling low stress bike routes a lot safer. Thanks for listening to my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. Councilmember Colson.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to support this project. I like it. I sometimes think, incrementalism is a really good start. It's like, let's start with what we can do right now. Let's get it rolled out. It's not probably going to be perfect. We'll make adjustments. I appreciate the public comment, but sometimes there's just practical constraints that our staff has to deal with, and our topography lends itself to, that make these incremental steps the appropriate way to go. I also am looking forward to it because I'm getting a lot of feedback around the Ralston and Occidental interchange, which is a very odd culmination of 4 sort of streets at a very strange angle with a very enormous intersection. And I'm hoping that maybe some of the work we've done in Lion Hogue and some of the work that's going on over in this area, we can learn and maybe bring a little bit over to here, because I will say that one great thing about the neighborhood in which I live is that people walk and ride their bikes everywhere over here, because we're so proximate to downtown. And I think we remain one of the most dangerous neighborhoods. So hopefully we can take some lessons and we can prioritize this little area, especially as we get El Camino fixed and people want more and more to walk and ride and use our new street.
Thank you, Councilmember Colson and Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 very quick comments. One, I do share the frustration with consultants who don't seem to understand our city and spend a lot of cycles proposing things that are just not workable. So I do hope, as we put out additional consulting bids in the future that we don't, I know we don't, but that we don't just pay attention to low cost. If somebody has got a track record of wasting time or really not hitting the mark on the first iteration, I don't think, let's steer clear. And I'm not saying that's what happened here because I wasn't part of the process, so I don't know. But I do think there's times when the consultants have not done a good job understanding the city in context, and that's frustrating. At the end of the day, for me as a cyclist and someone who spent a lot of time in places where they're cycling, I think it's all about car speed. So I think we can do all the painting we want, but I don't think let me make it more specific. I don't think the sharrows on Hillside have helped put one more cyclist on Hillside, but I think the stop sign that we put in at OLA, which stops traffic, has helped a lot. So anything for me, I just lean into anything that slows traffic in our residential neighborhoods is probably a good thing. And thank you to Public Works for all of the backstopping on this, and Teaspoon and BPAC.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Councilmember O'Brien.
Yeah, so my comment is, we're focusing on slowing the speed of cars, which I totally agree with. And the cars that don't come to complete stops at stop signs. But we also have to educate the people that are on bikes, that are flying through stop signs. Now that we're having, electric bikes and these electric scooters, they also have to be cognizant of all, these improvements and abide by the law, just like anyone driving a car. So I think there is an educational component to all this for both people in cars and people who are cycling. So it's just something that maybe we may want to incorporate with these improvements that will be implemented.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien. And I don't see anybody have any last thoughts. And having none, I hope Public Works, I hope that you have a good sense of how we all stand on this, and it sounds like we're all in favor. And so with that, I thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll proceed with that and incorporate as many comments as we can, and we'll follow up on the monitoring and making adjustments and considering when we do the phase 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martusa and Mr. Wong. We appreciate your time. So with that, we will move on to item number 7, which is public comments for items that are not on the agenda. And I will ask for the city clerk to take the lead on this.
Yep, I see one hand up from John, so go ahead. John, if you just unmute yourself. John?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Terrific, good, okay. I've been working with our contact council member Colson about my water leak at Cappuccino in Burlingame, 1220 Cappuccino. And of all of the documentation to the council members and city attorney regarding my leak, I gave it to Claudia Hamrick on the 24th of March to distribute the letters. They were all stamped, but I figure I'd give it to myself to the city hall. And I got no response whatsoever. And on June 21st, council member Colson asked for a new packet. I gave her a brand new packet of everything. And now everybody on the council should have my emails. And this is if you can see me, can you see me?
No, it doesn't seem like your camera's on.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. Anyway, I have 25 pages here of all the emails and correspondence to the council and to council member Colson. Basically, as you people have all the information ready that you should have read, the council knows that I have not been notified of my leak for at least 3 weeks after they read the meter until I got the bill. There was no notification whatsoever until I received the bill. If I was notified by email, text, or phone of the usage, because we lost 223,000 gallons of water, and we're in a drought situation. That doesn't go good with me and the public, I don't think. On September 2nd, I sent an email to the council about my January bill, which is the second bill, a loss of 132,000 gallons of water. Again, if I was notified in December or January, we would have not have wasted an additional 132,000 gallons of water. And this is not acceptable for me, and it's not acceptable for the public. We're in a drought. I was told that I did some research, and I was told that the water department has changed their notification. Now they are sending out texts, phones, and emails right away. So they did change their method. So the water department, in my opinion, knew they were not doing their diligence in contacting people with water leaks. I really need help with the water bill. This has been going on for 9 months. I got 25 pages of emails, and the mayor talked to me when I was driving. It was very nice of Mr. Mayor to do that. But who has helped me a lot is Councilwoman Colin, for sure, to help me out. I'm honestly, I do not expect the council to solve the problem. That's not your job. But I do expect the council to delegate authority to qualified people who can solve the issue.
Ron, you're over the 3-minute time limit. I'll give you a couple more sentences to wrap it up.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know we lost enough water to fill up this Burlingame swimming pool halfway. Anyway, thank you for your comment, and I hope you guys can help me out. I appreciate that. And thank you again, Councilwoman Coulson, for really guiding me along on this. It's very nice to see that. But the rest of you got to delegate authority.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scapazzi. And unfortunately, we're not able to respond to items that are not on the agenda. So I believe there has been quite a bit of correspondence back and forth. So we will follow up with you. Thank you for that. Any other public comment?
Our next one comes from Peter Stevenson.
Great, thank you.
Peter, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say to Mayor Ortiz, Vice Mayor Brownrigg, Council Members Beach, Colson, and O'Brien, just as well as all the city staff and everybody, just appreciate what you do. I know that this is a lot of work and there's a lot of attention, and I've been impressed with going through these last 2 council meetings, the level of conversation and depth around the issues and challenges. And as you all know, I'm running for District 5 position on City Council beginning next year. But I just, regardless of what happens, I just want to thank you. And as somebody who's lived in Burlingame for a long time, sometimes this role is not all that full of thanks, but I just wanted to share my appreciation.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Much appreciated. So
I did get one email in, Mayor Ortiz.
Okay.
It was from Kevin Wu. He said, oh, Jesus. Okay, sorry. I would like the City Council to review the Burlingame Aquatics guest limit and general hours. Sorry, that scared me. In general hours restrictions, which seemed to be put in place after the pool renovation was completed and COVID restrictions were enacted. The heat wave has been unprecedented, and Burlingame citizens don't have many options when it comes to public pools. Combined with an antiquated online reservation system that requires a week in advance booking means citizens can't fully utilize the pool, which is desperately needed. On top of that, climate change requires us to better utilize public utilities to save energy and resources. Please consider reviewing the pool's current restriction. Thank you, and sorry for that interruption.
Very good. So having no more comments, then we will move on to the consent agenda. And so I will put it for colleagues, item number 8. Do we have any items colleagues would like to pull? I see Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, a question on item 8D as in David.
Okay, good. So we will pull item 8D. Any others, colleagues? And with that, then we will open it to members of the public. Do any member of the public who wish to pull any of the items on the consent agenda?
I don't have any emails and I don't see any hands up.
Very good. With that, then I will bring it back to colleagues and I will entertain a motion to approve items 8A, B, C, E, A, B, C, and E.
Motion to approve
moved.
item. Oh, I'll take a second, then that's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who was it? Councilmember O'Brien was the motion. Motion by Councilmember O'Brien and second by Councilmember Coulson. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. And with that, we will move on to item number 8D. You said you have a quick question and maybe we can, well, let's have a presentation. Who is going to do the staff report on that one?
If I may, it's a pretty quick question I have. I'm not sure if we.
Very good. Okay, then go ahead and ask it and then we can.
So the item is to purchase or to renew a subscription sort of to provide body worn cameras and tasers to our police department. I am proud of our police department being one of the very first adopters of body worn cameras. So this is not about the content of the contract, which is beneficial. I was surprised that it was sole sourced and there was no indication that we looked around. And I'm happy if these are the best people, and I'm not surprised there's probably not a lot, but I didn't see any reference to looking at alternative suppliers. And I just wanted to ask the question, are there no alternatives? $400 and something thousand is a lot of money. So, just as good hygiene, usually we try to find a couple of bids. So I was just curious about the background of that.
Thank you. Good question. Madam City Manager, would you like to take that one? You want to?
I would love to have the police chief take that one. This is his
Thank
contract.
you. Chief Matucci, welcome.
Thank you. So when we initially went to body worn cameras, we did a big study. We tried a few different brands. The patrol officers tried them, and we did a big study, and we decided to go with Axon with those. And now there's a huge infrastructure set up. We've purchased storage, and so we are kind of a little bit down the road with them. Although we do continue to kind of look at different options, but at this point in time, Axon is kind of the best. I think the best bet for us. It's a kind of a little package as well. So I know the price seems high, but it's actually over, I believe, a 5-year period. So when I look at it, actually seems kind of inexpensive for what we get from them.
Well, thank you, Chief. And to be clear, I'm not sure that it's expensive or not. And I think what you just explained is super helpful in justifying why we're renewing. We already have, it's like they're embedded in a way. I just didn't see that in the staff report. And because it's a large dollar figure, I agreed over 5 years. I just thought it would be helpful to have in the public record why we're doing that. And I think your explanation is very sensible. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So now, colleagues, any other questions for this item? And with that, we will open it to members of the public to see if there's any public comment on this item.
I don't see any hands up and I don't have any emails on this item.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and we'll bring it back to colleagues for either final comments or a motion to approve item number 8D.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item 8D, and thank you for the additional clarification.
And I'll second. Beach.
So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Brownrigg and a second by Councilmember Beach. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes, thank you. With that, thank you, Chief. We will move on to item number 9A, which is a consideration of the appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of an applicant for a design review amendment for proposed changes to previously approved project for the new 2-story single unit dwelling and detached garage at 1345 Vancouver Avenue. And with that, I see our Director Gardner, please.
Thank you, Mayor Ortiz and members of the City Council. This is a consideration of an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of request for a design review amendment to allow proposed changes to a previously approved project at 1345 Vancouver Avenue. The Planning Commission approved an application for design review and special permit for a new 2-story single unit dwelling and detached garage at 1345 Vancouver Avenue on October 28, 2019. Building permit was issued in November of 2020, and the project is currently under construction. In April of 2022, the applicant submitted revisions to the existing building permit to request permission to change materials from the approved plans. Such a revision requires review by the Planning Commission. So staff prepared what's known as an FYI memorandum for review at the June 13th, 2022 meeting, and the Commission called up the FYI for review. In response to concerns raised when the Commission called up the FYI, the applicant submitted a letter indicating that the revisions were due to a supply shortage. The applicant reported that they could no longer obtain the materials that were needed, so had to change the plans to accommodate the supply issue. On July 11th of 2022, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to review the proposed changes of the project. After opening and closing the public hearing, the Commission deliberated and a motion carried to deny the request for the amendment. Commissioners indicated that they preferred that the project be built as originally approved, and some suggestions that materials that had been approved could not be obtained due to shortages. Subsequent to the Planning Commission's action, the property owner submitted a timely appeal of the Commission's action. The appeal letter explains the reasons for filing the appeal, and that letter is included with the staff report. I'll take a moment to walk through the changes, requested changes in the plans, and hard copies of the plans would have been delivered earlier today. Is the screen showing correctly? This is the title, and then this is the front elevation. So this is the front elevation and the changes that are being requested. The way all of these drawings are set up is the top is what was approved by the Planning Commission, and the bottom is the requested changes that have been were presented to the Planning Commission and now the City Council. So in this case, on the front elevation, the areas that had been approved to have stucco cladding have now been requested to have horizontal wood siding. Moving to the back elevation, there's a couple changes. The first is similar to the change from stucco in these parts of the house to siding. There's also a change in the railing. What was horizontal cable railing, metal cable railing in the approved plans has been requested to be replaced with wooden railing with vertical elements. Side elevations, similar. I won't put the circles on this one, but similar in request to replace the stucco surfaces with wood siding. Same with the other side. And same with the garage. Garage was approved with stucco, and the request is to have wood siding. So that's the extent of the changes that are being requested. As mentioned in the staff report, the council actions can include denying the appeal and upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the application, which in that case would, the original approval still stands. So that would be what would be the rule if that was the action. The council could grant the appeal and approve the application or make modifications, or could remand the application to the Planning Commission for reconsideration. And then as mentioned in the staff report, this is the fine print, but this is a de novo hearing. So issues may be considered by the council that were not necessarily reviewed by the planning commission. So the council is not obliged to continue what the planning commission had looked at, certainly could, but it's also a de novo hearing. So the application is being looked at on its own merits this evening. I do see a hand, so we'll have a moment to ask questions, but I do want to also mention with us tonight is Milo Traus, who is serving as the representative for the project, as well as Jason Wong, who is the project sponsor. I believe the designer Wilson Ng was also going to be here. I don't know if I've seen his name in the list, but in any case, the applicants will have an opportunity to make a presentation during the public hearing, but before that, I am available for questions of staff.
Very good. So that's what we'll do is we'll have some questions first. And Councilmember O'Brien, if you don't mind, I'm going to go I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The issue is we want to go from stucco to wood siding. And the reason we're saying is because we were not able to get materials to do the stucco siding. Am I missing something?
That is what the applicant has reported is yes, that they were not able to get the materials for the stucco siding.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councilmember O'Brien.
Yeah, so my question is, they're requesting these changes, but the changes have already been made, correct? Because I went by, did a site visit, it's already done.
That is correct. And I believe either the appeal letter or the applicant, when they address the council, may be able to provide a little more information on why the construction proceeded despite not having the prior approval.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? Okay, we just could open it to members of the public for this item. Madam City Clerk?
I believe we give the individual, yeah, and 10 minutes is what we've given them in the past in order to make
Very good. So if we could please have the applicant then, or just give them 10 minutes.
I'll move them over.
And that would be Milo Traus and Jason Wong.
Is it both of the Jason Wongs? Maybe one
I'm
of
not sure there's two. We could try one and see what happens.
Hello.
Hi.
Can everyone hear me and see me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
I'm Milo Traus. Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure my connection was a little bit. Thank you, council members, for taking the time to hear this appeal. I hope each of you had a great weekend and are managing the heat comfortably. As Mr. Gardner stated, I'm helping Jason
we're having some
navigate this municipal process as he built his house for his family. And today, yeah, we're asking you to the audio. Should I go back? Today, we're asking you to please grant approval for a design change or the exterior material on his house, specifically going from stucco to wooden siding. From two perspectives. One is on the aesthetics of the design change, and the other is through the lens of the city's process. The Planning Commission mainly considered the aesthetics in their review of the requested change as a design review amendment. However, today I would like to emphasize that our motive for requesting a design change is not based on aesthetic preferences, but on other concerns, most of them beyond our control, such as supply chain shortages and bad weather, but also on a desire to be a good neighbor. We could defend our decision on aesthetics basis as well, but I think that's less important. So we had to construction just about 1 year ago exactly, because we couldn't get the metal mesh that goes behind the stucco. Stucco is applied in 3 layers there's a base layer that has metal mesh, and it was just kind of like industry-wide hard to get. Our contractor, Ultra Construction, is a reputable local firm, and they searched many suppliers but couldn't get the metal mesh. And at the same time, there were heavy rains in Burlingame and in September and October of 2021. So faced with the material shortage and a flooding site, pressure was mounting to get the roof up, not only for the interest of protecting the construction site, but also for the neighbors. You know, having a half-finished construction project in the middle of the block is nobody's idea of appealing, and it's not the kind of neighbors we want to be. So with wooden siding available and being a matching material to the other houses on the block, we made the choice to use wooden siding so that construction could once again resume. As the materials were arriving, we sought approval for a design change, but had to continue work before the issue could be resolved. And the design change, which was dictated, I just want to note, by the material shortage, it meets all applicable code standards, and our architect is here to speak to that in greater detail. We're not, you know, sacrificing anything on quality. And I'd also like to know now that
Milo,
the
you might
person
want
who was helping Jason navigate the approval process before me suffered a health issue. What's that?
You might want to turn
Hello?
off your video because your
Hello?
connectivity. Yep. You might want to turn off your video because your connectivity isn't great. And that way, then maybe we can hear you better.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. I don't know if it's any better now. I can try to move to another part of my
No,
house.
we can hear you fine now.
Oh, but should I go back and restate some?
No, I think we heard mostly. I think we got, yeah, I think we heard you.
Okay, so I was just, I was noting that the person who was helping Jason navigate this approval process before me suffered a health issue and failed to communicate our hearing date to the rest of our team. And this is why no one was present at the planning commission meeting. And frankly, these two things combined to be another setback on an already very difficult construction process. And so tonight we're asking for empathy and forgiveness, and for you to please grant the design change so that we can wrap this up as soon as possible and get all of the construction interruption out of the neighborhood. If we have to go back and tell the neighbors that we have to do the siding, they'll probably wring our necks. So please, just thank you for your consideration. We'll of course be available to answer any questions. The architect Wilson Ning is with Jason Wong. I think that maybe is why his name didn't show up, but they're both available to answer any questions, as am I. So I hope that provides some background as to how this kind of unfolded. It's very unusual and certainly not our intent to kind of diverge or, you know, thumb our nose or anything at the city process. And, you know, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and now is
the time of the planning commission and everybody, we just kind of want to do the right thing.
Okay. Now, Mr. Wong, do you wish to say a few words? You're muted, Mr. Wong.
Are you good? This whole building process has been obviously, it wasn't not the best process to go through, especially during COVID, you know. I have the utmost respect for everybody on this council, and you also, Mayor Ortiz, and the Vice Mayor. I love the city. I've been a resident of the city for almost 20 years already. My kids go to school down the street. I know what it appears in front of you guys is that you think that, hey, I'm one of those people that are going to actually do what I want when I want. It's actually very opposite. I follow all the directions. I know the neighbors on my block. One of the issues that we're running into was that the construction phase, it got to a point where it wasn't just the mesh. I mean, we had we have material issues. I mean, it took me 9 months to just get center blocks. You know, I mean, it went on and on. One of the major issues that we were running into with the siding was that we couldn't close up the house during the rainy season. And I'm not sure if everyone remembers, but we went through the biggest rainy season, I think the month of December. It actually stopped the whole project for about two and a half months because the site was completely flooded. I paid Public Works probably like close to $10,000 in fines already in the last 12 months. I'm coming to you guys because I'm letting you guys know that all these things have happened. These aren't the things I want to do, you know. The reason why the siding had to go up was because if we couldn't put the siding up, we couldn't run the drains in the house and we couldn't get the scaffolds off. So just imagine that the whole house is completely scaffolded, the project is completely flooded, and we have to run drains along both sides of the house and the back of the house. So if I knew that the siding was going to be this big of an issue, I mean, I would have just not even do this and just go ahead and just completely gut out the whole exterior of my house. But one of the things I'm running into is that the neighbor right next to me has 3 kids. 2 of his kids go to school with 2 of my kids. And we started this process. We tore the house down the day he brought his newborn in, you know. I mean, we've already been coordinating with the neighbors across the street and the neighbors right next to me, where we actually have to stop construction towards the middle of the day so the kids can nap. You know, my neighbor actually wanted to be here tonight, but tonight, I mean, all of us have young kids, including myself. So he says, hey, you know, I can't make it tonight, but I just want to let you know that, you know, there's nothing going on where you're thinking that, hey, you know, we're trying to do what we want to do when we want to do it. If you guys have a big issue with the siding on it, I mean, is a big deal for me, but it's not a big deal for me. I mean, I've already spent over $500,000 over budget just because of the material costs and appliances already. So for me to spend an extra $30,000 to go ahead and gut the whole entire exterior of the home and redo it, the money portion of it is not that big of a deal, but I think the inconvenience I'm going to give my neighbors, especially the one right next door to me, which I see all the time, I think that would be a big inconvenience, you know. The last planning hearing, I mean, I'm not a developer. I mean, I fix cars. So I don't really know what the process is. I'm just a homeowner. I'm not a developer. This house, I'm not selling the house. I talked to Milo a couple of times this week, and he says, "Hey, you know, just try to keep everything on the agenda and not go back and forth between what you do for the community." Me and my wife, we contribute a tremendous amount of time into the community, and I'm not here to try to use that as consideration or sympathy. You know, it's just I think the last 18 months of building this home, there's a lot of things that we've gone through. I'm not sure how the other contractors, what they go through, but this is what happened on the house. On the last hearing, the person who was actually doing all the hearing and actually getting all the appointments for me, she was actually my office manager in my own company. And, you know, she, unfortunately something happened and some of the dates got mixed up and then I missed it, you know, obviously, you know, and Milo didn't have a chance. I think I have nothing but love for you guys, for the city. You guys do a great job. I mean, I think, you know, I don't want to take up any more of your time because I think you guys got a lot of other bigger issues to tackle versus deciding in my home. But thanks for letting me kind of let you guys know what happened, and I hope that,
10 minutes.
yeah.
Mayor Ortiz, you are muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I was saying some really brilliant stuff. So I was just saying thank you, Mr. Wong, and thank you, Mr. Strauss, for your time. And so with that, we will open it to other members of the public that wish to comment on this item.
Jennifer Pfaff, you can go
And
ahead.
Jennifer Pfaff is one of our planning commissioners, so she has probably some good insight.
Hi there. I was here for the El Camino meeting, but I saw this item and I do want to say that although the homeowner apparently is not aware exactly of how the system works. The designer, I believe this was a Form 4 or something like that. He is well aware of the system. And I had actually, as a new commissioner, I agreed with my colleagues, and I had no idea that the project originally had gone to a design reviewer. And so they were quite adamant about what had happened, that it be built the way they had intended, and we could not understand the explanation about the stucco mesh. I still don't really know. I mean, guess one could make a leap and say that's true, it was in shortage, but I think the bigger issue for me, and I don't even know if I'm really supposed to comment on this, but just for me personally, because I listened to many planning commission meetings before I was a planning commissioner. It is this city and the staff and the planners spend an enormous amount of time going through the plans and get all their ducks in a row for the presentations. The planning commission spends an enormous amount of time on the plans, and then to see an approved plan simply changed and then to get basically caught as an FYI and brought back to decide whether that was, if it's permissible or not, but even worse, to see the FYI actually happen before there's permission given. That was discussed 2 years ago, I believe, when Councilwoman Keegren was mayor. It's a really big issue, and it takes a lot of time. And most of the designers that work here, you know, they know that, and some of them don't pay any attention and just try to get projects through that way. And it's really not fair to those who follow the rules. And whether you fall in that, you personally or not, I can't judge, and the council is certainly free to do what they want. But I just do want to say what happened at the meeting. It was not, it had much earlier gone through a full design consultant review rather than just the planning commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pfaff. Do you have any other public comment?
We do not.
Very good. So I will bring it back to colleagues. If I may, I just have a couple of questions, and maybe Director Gardner, you're probably the best suited for. So the first question is, I mean, we've had this situation in the past. This is not the first time this happens in the city. So what is typically what happens when things like this come before the planning commission?
So two things I want to clarify, and also I see the applicant is still here. So what I told them, I hope it was not incorrect, is they are able to provide a rebuttal of sorts to any public comments. In this case, and maybe they can help us with this. I don't believe this firm has done work in Burlingame before. The designer it's SJA Development LLC Design Division, in case there's any confusion as to whether it's someone else that has done work. But to answer Mayor Ortiz's question, the Planning Commission does face difficult choices when things like this happen, because particularly when it is an as-built change, the changes are there. So they're put in the position of either needing to ask for the change to be removed and have the building built as approved, which is certainly their prerogative. Sometimes if there are reasons for the changes that, for example, something happened in the field, or maybe there was sometimes changes do happen during construction that were not anticipated. They can take some of the changes and allow some, but then also disallow some of the other changes. So we've had a few instances where maybe the most important items are kind of held firm, and then a couple of other items, maybe, say trim or corner boards or something like that, are considered less central to the design integrity. So we have had a few instances where it's a kind of partial denial, partial approval. So it is a case by case. It's always difficult when the changes have already been built, though.
And could I ask you another question? Is your sense that the outcome would have been different should the applicant have been at that meeting?
I don't know. I mean, certainly what we've heard this evening, the applicant has provided more detailed explanations than what I think the Planning Commission had received up until that time. But we also heard from at least one of the commissioners in the meeting minutes mentions they like the approved design. They don't really understand or accept that the changes would be made in any case, and sort of felt that there wasn't much the applicant could say that would change their mind. And that was really the foundation for the commission moving forward with the decision.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Appreciate your comments. And I see Mr. Wong, you want to keep just a short comment on response to what was said? I'm sorry.
They have a total of 5 minutes for a rebuttal between the two of them. So
very good. So
yeah, I'll be really quick. I just want to let all the council members know and everybody in this meeting know that I didn't get caught. I mean, this is not something where, someone caught me doing something, This is one of the changes on the plans. And we did as much as we can in a short amount of time. And we're trying to navigate through the city and try to get this thing done. So what Jennifer was saying was absolutely incorrect. I did not get caught. But right now, based on the minutes of the meeting for the Planning Commission, it seems like when I wasn't there, it seems like they made a decision, and when I didn't get a chance to really present what happened.
Very good.
I'd like to just also add that this is sort of an extenuating circumstance in that the first building permits were granted in November of 2020, during COVID, during lots of uncertainty. And so there was a lot of kind of unpredictability and nothing was sloppy or not thought out, but rather it was just a hard time, a hard time in the kind of the world of building, and we were sort of victims to that. And so, yeah, I just want to point that out there, and I'll just keep it at that, I guess.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to bring it back to colleagues for any final comments. I have a few thoughts on this one, but I would love to hear from my two colleagues who are former planning commissioners, because I think you guys have a little more insight on this. So I see Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you, through the mayor. So I read the staff report. I went by the site, and as Mr. Wong says, there were circumstances, and the circumstances were COVID and delayed supply. Well, everyone else that was building a house was in the same situation with things being delayed. So I don't see this as something necessarily out of the ordinary, because there is a process to follow. To go ahead and make, and this is a major change. It's not a minor change. It's a major change to the exterior of the house without getting permission. In my opinion, should have never been done. To say that you weren't able to make it to the meeting, something may have come up, but multiple people can represent you at the meeting. You could have had, a contractor, the designer, applicant. I mean, there's a variety of people that can come to a meeting, or call and say, you can't make it to the meeting and let's just schedule it at another time. And it gets delayed to another agenda. But none of that was done. I understand, I've been on the planning commission, and so has my colleague, Vice Mayor Brownrigg, for many years in the past, and things do happen out in the field, but you get permission to make the changes. You don't make the changes and then ask for forgiveness. And it's quite clear when I read the minutes from the planning commission. I mean, it was a 6 votes that aren't allowing this. 1 was absent, so it was unanimous of people that were present. And if you read the comments, it was basically, it should have been built as approved. So I am a big believer in process, and the process wasn't followed. I mean, everyone else has to follow the process. And if we let people go and forgive them, it's not fair to the people who do follow the process, or for people who find changes, they need to make some changes, let's say in the middle of the project, and they stop it and they, make their changes with their new drawings. They come in front of the planning commission, and then it's up to the planning commission to make, those decisions. That's what we have them there for. But that wasn't done. And so on that note, I will go along with the planning commission with their decision and not grant this appeal.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien. Any other colleagues want to weigh in? Okay, okay, go ahead. Councilmember, Vice Mayor Brownrigg, please.
So I do think these are very difficult situations for everybody, for the homeowner, for the city, for the process, for the planning commissioners who work hard to try to make every new building, make Burlingame better. So this is why politics are hard sometimes. I for one, I do appreciate the homeowner being here. I think it makes a big difference. I read those minutes. I didn't listen to the video, which I should have done, but reading the minutes, there were a lot of people who were upset about a major change and nobody there to defend it, which does give the sense of like, well, it doesn't really matter. This is like so obvious, or I can do what I want. So I can see why. And I do think that sort of imbued the at least the written minutes. Me personally, I would remand this back to the planning commission and do a reset on that part of the process. Now we may wind up here again in a month or 6 weeks. But I felt that planning commissioners wanted to ask questions, weren't able to ask questions, and then got frustrated, and I've been frustrated, where we work hard, we're not paid, and we're up late at night, and the homeowner doesn't have, or the designer or the builder doesn't have the courtesy to show up and answer questions, so you get kind of frustrated. So I would personally recommend a redo. And I would hope that if there was a redo, that people would really just look at the overall aesthetics of what's there. I do take the homeowner, and I completely agree with Councilmember O'Brien's point about process. Process is important. On the other hand, there's also the practicality of ripping off a bunch of siding and putting it in landfill, delaying the project for the neighbors. I think that's why it's not an easy decision, and I would personally put it back in front of planning and let planning wrestle with the trade-offs of putting a bunch of stuff in landfill versus making it look the way it was first drawn. So that would be my feeling.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I see Councilmember Colson.
Thank you. So this might be a question to our city attorney. If you set a precedent, and again, I agree with Councilwoman O'Brien that the magnitude of this change is fairly enormous. It's not just a new deck rail, and it's elevations on all sides. And So if you allow a precedent like this, then does every person who comes along and says, hey, I couldn't get my supplies, I decided to make a bunch of changes, I did stucco, not wood siding. I mean, how does that work?
So any of the decisions you make tonight are not precedential in terms of any decisions that may come before you in the future. So regardless of whether you grant the appeal, deny the appeal, that does not tie the city council to any particular course of action for any future decisions. Each future decision will stand on its own merits.
Okay, great. And I guess, you know, I would not, I will feel very uncomfortable approving this change today. So I'm in the either remediate back to the planning commission, but frankly, leaning a little more toward deny. And you know, the other reason is I also drove by the house. And when you look at the overall aesthetics of the home, had it been all, you know, wood, maybe there would have been a different roofing material. I think it's a little odd to have like a really modern metal roof with sort of cottagey shingle wood on the side. So even that combination might not have flown through the very first time on the planning commission. And I also agree with Councilwoman O'Brien on the fact that materials, I mean, this project was begun during COVID. By December of 2020, everybody knew materials were lagging. I was actually also in the middle of remodeling a home at that same time. And we were building a community center, which is right behind me, which had a lot of situation going on. But, you know, if we couldn't come up with the right material, we would, you know, the best thing to do is to try to go back to the planning commission and get it figured out. And we did have storms in December, but overall, the last couple winters have been pretty dry for building. I know my situation was pretty dry. So I really feel empathy for these people. I'm sad for the neighbors who might have to, you know, deal with more noise, but I also really feel pretty strongly, as Commissioner Pfaff mentioned, that, you know, we have standards and we have policies and processes and procedures. So I'm not that enthusiastic about just letting it all kind of slide.
Thank you. Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a tough one. I think the Planning Commission did the right thing. I see where their perspective is to kick it up to us because they had a process. It wasn't followed. They've got to send it forward. And, you know, I respect that. I'm comforted that the designer is not, and this team is not a repeat offender, that this is a pattern of behavior, because we need to put the kibosh on those kind of patterns of behavior of if there are contractors out there that are doing this to, you know, shirk the system. But it sounds like that's not what's happened in this case. So I'm trying to look at this as we're tasked to do on its own merits, to put it all, you know, consider the process, but look at what's before us, as Vice Mayor Brownrigg suggested. And I also think it's incumbent upon us to be reasonable. I look at the design, and I don't have an expert eye, but when I saw the facade, you know, what the house looks like right now compared to the prior design, I think the siding looks pretty good. I think it's attractive. In fact, probably to my personal taste, I think it looks better having the siding rather than the stucco mix. That's just my opinion, but I'm not a professional at this or have the background. To me, I know it's significant that the siding has changed, but it's not changing the height. It's not adding a porch where there shouldn't have been. It's not adding an extra bedroom or changing the scale of the project. So I don't see this as a structural integrity difference. I see this as something that shouldn't have happened. And it's a difficult choice, but I would be inclined either to kick it back to planning, I guess, to reconsider or even consider approving for the reasons that Councilmember Vice Mayor Brownrigg stated. Do we really want to tell a homeowner that they need to rip off the siding that looks good, throw it in a landfill when it might have been approved if they had gone through the process? Now, I'm a little bit confused at the timing because it seems that if as the materials were arriving, you sought approval, you would have had approval during rainy season or at least closer to it than the spring. So I'm a little confused on that. Contractors and designers should know better, having gone through the design review process. This should not be before us. This should not be happening. But I think we have to be reasonable. Is this really something we want to tell? We want to instruct somebody to rip it off and start over because of process when it actually looks pretty good. So I lean towards either approving or kicking back to planning. My concern is kicking back to planning as it puts a lot more of our staff time and public process that if we're going to get to the end anyway, I could see approving. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. God, this is a tough one because I'm kind of offended by the way this all happened and the way that and some of the explanations, frankly, don't hold water as far as I'm concerned. And I didn't, no pun intended there, but they flaunted the rules. They went around our process. We have a process that we established to do this. And for whatever reason, they decided to put the siding in before it was approved. Whether that means you were caught or not, means you were going to get caught at some point in any case. And I'm kind of offended. And again, the fact that nobody showed up for that meeting makes it even worse, because it was like, not only do I not care about your process to do what you told me to do, but I don't even show up to try to defend what we did, which was wrong. So I'm 100%. I know that I'm not going to grant the appeal. I know that. So for me, my only choice is between remanding it and denying it. And now I look at it. I did drive by it. I think it's funny because I feel it fits the one side of the street, not the other side, but it does fit that side. So I didn't find it terrible, but I think that Councilmember Colson makes a really good point. If we were going to have siding, then what about the roof and what about everything else that goes with it? You can't look at it in a vacuum and say, yes, we're just going to approve that little change. No, you would look at the whole project and the architectural integrity of that whole project. And I think that has been compromised. And I don't think so. The only thought I have is that if we're denying this simply because we're so offended because they went around the process, then we might not be doing the right thing. So for me, I very, very, very reluctantly, I'm ready to to remand it to the Planning Commission and give the applicant the opportunity to defend his actions in front of the Planning Commission and let them, with their architectural review review the changes and determine whether it's okay or not. I'm with Councilmember Beach. I thought it looked okay. It didn't bother me, but again, we have the process for a reason, and the reason is I'm not an architect. So I'm going to go along with the remand, and I'd be happy to make a motion unless somebody else would want to do that. Okay, so here goes. I make a motion that we remand this application back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration.
Second.
And I have a second from Vice Mayor Brownrigg. Can we please have roll call?
Councilmember O'Brien?
No.
Councilmember Beach?
Yes.
Councilmember Colson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg?
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz?
Yes, and I hope that this is not interpreted as being lenient. We're giving you the benefit of the doubt so you can make your presentation before the Planning Commission. But I hope you can hear it in our voices and hearing what we're saying, that we're offended by the fact that the process has been circumvented, and that's just not the way we like to see things happen. With that, thank you, colleagues. This was a hard decision, and I appreciate the comments and everything. So with that, we will move on to item number
May I ask
9B.
a question? Can I ask
Yes.
a question? So I just want to understand the process. It goes back, it remediates back to the planning commission. The applicant and architects and everything have another opportunity to come and present to the commission. And then the commission, they may or may not show up. They can make a decision and then they can still reappeal it back up to the council. Is that correct? And then we could listen to the comments of and they would have to pay another fee, correct? And
Yes,
yeah.
that's correct.
So they pay another fee.
Sorry, that's a very good question, Councilmember Coulson. Can we just explore that for a second? Do they have to pay another fee? I mean, can we waive or not? No?
I don't think you can.
It would be a separate hearing and it requires noticing. So yes, we would have to have them pay the fees.
All right.
Okay.
I'm not offended. I'm truly not offended by the fact that they would have to pay the fee. I think they're putting everybody to extra work because they didn't show up to that meeting. So I'm really not in the slightest bit bothered by that extra fee.
Fair enough.
I would agree. So then they would have an opportunity to speak. We'd get to be able to hear the planning commission's responses and discussion like we did. And then it would come back if they reappeal it, assuming that if for some reason, if the outcome at the planning commission was similar to this time and they chose to appeal it again, then it would come back with all, with the details from that particular hearing back up to us. And then we would have another conversation. And then at that point, it cannot be remediated back. It just has to be either deny or accept. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, the question is if it comes back to us, can we still remand it and send it back?
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand the process. So really it circles back around once, it makes an appeal, comes back up to us. And then if we, at that point, since it's already been remanded once back and they've now had their opportunity to come, we have the data and the decision from the planning commission, should they appeal that for whatever reason, and it came back to us, and this is more general process overall, then at that point, our decision would be approve or deny. Is that correct? There's no remediating it back.
Okay, so the question is, if it comes back to council, do we have the option to remand it once again back to the planning commission?
Right. So the way I'm reading the planning code, the zoning ordinance, is that if it comes back to you in those circumstances, the city council has the full range of options. So deny the appeal, approve the appeal, or remand it back to the planning commission again, which makes sense to me because there may be additional evidence that came up through this whole process where you may have questions again and may want to remand it back to the commission for whatever reason. But the short answer, Councilmember Coulson, is that yes, you would have all three options again in front of you.
And likewise, the applicant, if they, I guess the next step would be, should you require an applicant under any circumstance to go back and remediate something that they did that they now have to take out? I don't care whether it's a balcony, a porch, or whatever. How long do they have to do that?
How long do they I'm sorry, how long do they have?
Like if someone were to be told, you have to make this change, you have
if
to
we
go back.
denied the appeal.
We denied the appeal. How long does the applicant have to remedy the issue?
So without any specific order into the resolution, it would probably be a reasonable period of time.
Okay.
And if they didn't do it within a reasonable period of time, then we can start taking enforcement action.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because, you know, I'm assuming you're not going to make somebody tear a roof off in the middle of the winter or open up siding in the middle of winter, that kind of thing. And then I guess there's another choice here, which is that the applicant, having gone through this once or twice and whatever, we heard today that money was not the issue. And obviously the original plan was approved. It's really more about what they're saying is like the noise and the inconvenience for the neighbors. But the other option would be the applicant just withdraws and decides to move into compliance.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we are ready to move on to item number 9B, which is introduction of an ordinance amending section 1304-100 of the Burlingame Municipal Code to add Juneteenth as a parking meter holiday. Secret determination exempt pursuant to state secret guidelines, section 15378, 15061. And I will pass it on. Who is doing the presentation?
I'll be taking this one out.
Mr. City Attorney, please.
Yeah, and I've got the chief as my backup. So I've got a short presentation for you all tonight. This is a public hearing to introduce the proposed ordinance, which would amend the municipal code to add Juneteenth or June 19th to the list of holidays for parking meters. The recommended procedure that we are asking you to follow is on the first page of your staff report, and that's to receive the staff report, ask any questions, ask that the city clerk read the title of the proposed ordinance, and then you adopt a motion to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance. After you've conducted a public hearing and discussed the ordinance, we ask that you adopt a second motion to determine whether to bring it back for second reading. So by way of background, the municipal code provides that parking meters are enforced every day except for Sundays and specified holidays. Those specified holidays are also spelled out in the municipal code, and that's basically all federal holidays. In 2021, the president added Juneteenth or June 19 as the newest federal holidays, but since our Muni code hasn't been updated yet, as of right now, we still enforce parking meters on Juneteenth. So what this ordinance does is updates the municipal code to add Juneteenth as a parking meter holiday, consistent with all other federal holidays. There is a fiscal impact to taking on the action, and that's the loss of 1 day's worth of parking meter revenue, which staff estimates at around $6,000. So that's the conclusion of my report. I'm available for questions. The chief is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Colleagues, any questions of the city attorney or the chief? I see no hands raised. So with that, we will request that the city clerk read the title of the proposed ordinance.
An ordinance of the city of Burlingame amending section 13.04.100 of the Burlingame Municipal Code to add Juneteenth as a parking meter holiday. CEQA determination exempt pursuant to state CEQA guidelines, section 15378 and 15061B3.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And then if I could have a motion to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember O'Brien, a second by Councilmember Beach. If we could have roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes, thank you. And with that, we will open it to the public. So Madam City Clerk, you're in control.
Don't see anyone with their hand raised, and I don't have any emails.
Very good. Now we'll bring it back to colleagues. I think after a hard decision in the prior one, this one's pretty straightforward. I personally, I can see that this one's an easy one to move forward. So colleagues? No comments. So with that, then we will bring it back in the future. And
Mayor Ortiz, can we have a motion to bring it back for a second reading?
Motion to bring it back for a second reading.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the second. Was that Councilmember Coulson?
Yeah.
Motion by Vice Mayor Brownrigg, second by Councilmember Coulson. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes, thank you. With that, we will move on to item number 10, staff reports and communications. Having none, then we will move on to item number 11, which is council committee and activities reports and announcements. So colleagues, I see Councilmember Beach has her hand raised.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just real quick, because I know it's been a long meeting. At our San Mateo County Transportation Authority monthly meeting, we were getting a quarterly infrastructure report of projects, and Broadway 101 interchange, the landscaping. I took the opportunity to just check in because it's been on our list that should be completed by the Caltrans aspect of the landscaping, which has been lingering, right? The city's right of way has been completed for a while, but the Caltrans landscaping has been on the target list to be complete by November. It looks like it's been delayed because of staging and construction of the 101 express lane. They're looking to finish the final details of the design, I guess, by November, and they're optimistic that by the spring, that landscape project will be completed. And I'm just keeping my eye on it, and I know Syed is too, but thought I'd share that. And just since we've been talking about bike ped infrastructure earlier this summer, kudos to staff for getting some grant applications in. We've got, I think, $100,000 from the TA for TDM planning, a master plan for the city, and also a partnership with Millbrae, a $400,000 pilot program for a bike share pilot program. So bravo to staff for getting on those opportunities, because there's a lot of funding coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. And any others from the colleagues? Having no hands raised, and we will move on to item number 12, which is future agenda items. So colleagues, anybody want to propose any future agenda items? I see no hands raised. Oh, I see now an log.
I didn't want to propose another item, but I did just want to remind everybody that because Mr. Scarpese came today to talk about the water situation, that we did put that on for a future agenda item. So we are, and in case he's looking or watching or rewatching the video, we do have that on for a future discussion.
Very good. Thanks for the reminder. And with that, we will move on to acknowledgements. We have the agenda packets and meeting minutes of the Planning Commission, Traffic Safety and Parking Commission, Beautification Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, the Library Board of Trustees. They're all available at www.burlingame.org. And with that, we move on to item number 14, which is adjournment. And I'm just curious if anybody we'd like to remember in adjournment. And I see no hands. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you very much to everybody. Good night.
Good night.